The moment Briggs's hand grabbed Tessa's collar and yanked her across the counter, everything in that corner store stopped. The hum of the refrigerators, the rain outside, even Noah's breath. Three thugs. One terrified girl. One exhausted father who knew he couldn't win. But what those men didn't know, what nobody knew, was that three shadows had been watching from the back of the store the whole time. Shadows wearing leather. Shadows who'd seen enough. Stay with me until the end, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down like a whisper that night, the kind that didn't announce itself with thunder or lightning, but just settled over the city like a cold, wet blanket. It was the kind of rain that made you want to be anywhere but outside, the kind that seeped into your bones and made you remember every mistake, every wrong turn, every moment you wished you could take back. Noah Jensen felt all of it as he pulled his beat-up Honda into the parking lot of Mike's Corner Store, the only place still open at 11:45 on a Thursday night in this part of town. The neon sign flickered. My Ease, CRNRSTRE. Half the letters dead or dying, casting an anemic glow across the wet asphalt. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel, watching the rain streak down the windshield in patterns that looked almost intentional. He was tired. God, he was tired. The kind of tired that sleep didn't fix. The kind that had been building up for 3 years, ever since Sarah packed her bags and told him she couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't do the struggling, couldn't do the small apartment, couldn't do the life they'd built that had turned out to be so much smaller than the one she'd imagined. She'd left him with their daughter Emma, who was 7 now and still asked sometimes when Mommy was coming home, even though it had been so long that Noah suspected she was asking more out of habit than hope. Tonight had been a double shift at the warehouse, 10 hours of loading trucks and moving pallets and pretending his back didn't scream every time he bent over. His supervisor had asked if he could stay late. There was a shipment that needed to go out first thing in the morning, and they were short-handed. Noah had wanted to say no. He'd wanted to say he had a daughter at home with a babysitter who charged by the hour, that he was already running on 4 hours of sleep, that his body was starting to feel like it belonged to someone twice his age. But he'd said yes, because that's what you did when you were a single father living paycheck to paycheck. You said yes, and you stayed late. And you stopped by the store on the way home because your daughter had mentioned that morning that they were out of cereal. And even though it was past midnight and every part of you wanted to just go home and collapse, you stopped anyway because that's what love looked like when you stripped away all the poetry and romance. It looked like a tired man sitting in a dark parking lot, gathering the energy to walk through the rain. Noah grabbed his jacket from the passenger seat, a thin windbreaker that did approximately nothing against this kind of weather, and pushed open the door. The rain hit him immediately, cold and insistent, and he jogged across the parking lot to the store's entrance, his work boots splashing through puddles that reflected the broken neon above. The bell above the door chimed as he pushed inside, and Noah was immediately grateful for the warmth, even though it was that artificial heat that came from too many fluorescent lights and not enough ventilation. The store was small, cramped with narrow aisles packed with overpriced convenience items and questionable produce. But it was open, and that's all that mattered. Behind the counter stood a young woman who couldn't have been more than 22, 23 maybe. She had dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore the tired expression of someone who'd spent the last 8 hours dealing with drunk customers, lottery scratchers, and the general chaos that came with working the closing shift at a place like this. Her name tag read Tessa in faded letters, and she was wiping down the counter with a rag that had probably been white once upon a time. She looked up when Noah entered, and her expression shifted, just slightly, from exhaustion to wariness. It was a look he'd seen before, the look people gave men who walked into stores late at night. He didn't take it personally. He was a big guy, 6'2" and broad-shouldered from years of manual labor, with a rough beard he didn't have time to trim properly. He probably looked exactly like the kind of person you'd worry about at this hour. "Hey," he said, offering a small, non-threatening smile as he grabbed a shopping basket. "Sorry, I know it's late. Just need to grab a couple things real quick." Tessa relaxed, just a fraction. "It's okay," she said, her voice carrying the rasp of someone who'd been talking all day. "We're technically open for another 10 minutes anyway." Noah nodded his thanks and headed toward the back of the store, where the refrigerated section hummed against the far wall. He could feel Tessa's eyes on him for a moment, that instinctive tracking that people did when they were alone in a store late at night, making sure he wasn't going to do anything unpredictable. He didn't blame her. The world had taught her to be cautious, and that was probably the only reason she was still safe. He found the milk first, whole milk, because Emma insisted it tasted better than the 2% stuff, and he'd learned to pick his battles. Then he headed down the cereal aisle, scanning the colorful boxes until he found the one with the cartoon tiger on it. Emma had been obsessed with that cereal for the last 3 months, and Noah had no idea why, but he'd stopped questioning the dietary preferences of 7-year-olds around the same time she'd insisted that pizza was a breakfast food. He grabbed a box, checked the price out of habit, too expensive, but everything was these days, and headed back toward the front. As he walked, he noticed something that hadn't registered when he first came in. There were 3 other people in the store. They were in the back corner, near the area where Mike's had set up a few tables and chairs, ostensibly for people to sit and eat the sad sandwiches and suspicious hot dogs that rotated on the warmer near the cash register. Noah couldn't see them clearly from where he was, just shapes and shadows and the occasional glint of light off something metallic. Bikers, probably. He'd seen a few motorcycles parked on the side of the building when he'd pulled in, chrome and steel gleaming even in the rain. They were probably just waiting out the weather, having a coffee or killing time before heading back out onto the road. Noah thought nothing of it as he approached the counter, setting his items down. Tessa was already moving toward the register, her movements automatic after countless transactions. She scanned the milk, then the cereal, and Noah watched the numbers climb on the display, already doing the mental math of what he had left in his account versus what needed to last until Friday. 1748, Tessa said, and Noah pulled out his debit card, swiping it through the reader and waiting for that agonizing moment when the machine decided whether to approve or decline. It beeped acceptance, and he exhaled without realizing he'd been holding his breath. "You want a bag?" Tessa asked. "Nah, I'm good," Noah said, tucking the milk under one arm and grabbing the cereal box with his other hand. "Thanks." "No problem," Tessa said, and then she glanced at the clock on the wall behind her, 11:54. "Have a good night." "You too," Noah said, turning toward the door. He was already thinking about the drive home, about checking on Emma, about the blessed moment when he could finally take off these wet clothes and collapse into bed. He was 3 steps from the door when the bell chimed again. The sound cut through the quiet hum of the store like a knife, sharp and sudden, and Noah stopped without knowing why. There was something about it, about the way it rang, that felt different from when he'd entered. Or maybe it was the silence that followed, the way the air in the store suddenly felt heavier, thicker. He turned, still holding his groceries, and saw 3 men standing in the doorway. The first thing Noah noticed was that they weren't wet. They should have been. It was pouring outside, but they looked like they'd been standing under cover somewhere, waiting. The second thing he noticed was the way they moved into the store, not with the casual gait of tired customers, but with purpose, with the kind of predatory confidence that came from knowing you were the biggest threat in the room. The one in front was tall, easily 6'4", with a shaved head and a neck thick enough to suggest either weightlifting or steroids, possibly both. He wore a stained wife-beater under an open flannel shirt, and his arms were covered in tattoos that looked like they'd been done in someone's basement. Prison ink, maybe. His face was angular and mean, with small eyes that swept across the store like he was cataloging everything worth taking. Behind him came 2 others. One was shorter but wider, built like a fire hydrant, with a beer gut that strained against his black t-shirt. He had a patchy beard and a ball cap pulled low, and he was grinning in a way that made Noah's stomach turn, the kind of grin that said he was here for entertainment, and he didn't care what kind. The third was wiry and nervous, with sunken cheeks and hands that kept moving, fidgeting with his jacket zipper, scratching at his arms. Tweaker, Noah thought. Maybe meth. Maybe something else, but definitely using. Noah's grip tightened on his groceries. Every instinct he had, every lesson learned from growing up in neighborhoods where you learned to read situations fast or pay the price, was screaming at him that this was wrong. Behind the counter, Tessa had straightened up. Her hand was still on the rag she'd been using to wipe down the counter, but her knuckles were white. Noah saw her throat work as she swallowed. Sorry, she said, and her voice was steady, steadier than Noah would have expected. We're actually closed. I was just about to lock up. The tall one, Noah would later learn his name was Briggs, but right now he was just a threat without a name, stopped in the middle of the store and looked at Tessa. Really looked at her, with eyes that traveled up and down her body in a way that made Noah want to step between them. That right? Briggs said, and his voice was exactly what Noah expected, rough and mocking, with an edge of violence underneath. Store says you're open till midnight. Clock's broken, Tessa said quickly, pointing to the wall behind her. It's past closing. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Briggs smiled, but it wasn't a smile that reached his eyes. You're going to have to ask us to leave, he repeated, like he was tasting the words. You hear that, boys? She's going to have to ask us. The shorter one, the fire hydrant, laughed, a wet, ugly sound. That's real polite of her. The tweaker didn't laugh. He was already moving, circling around to the left, his eyes darting between the aisles like he was looking for something, or making sure no one else was here. Noah's heart was hammering now. He set the milk and cereal down on a nearby shelf as quietly as he could, freeing his hands. He was outnumbered, probably outgunned if any of these guys were carrying, and he had a daughter at home who needed him. Every rational part of his brain was telling him to just walk out, to leave before this turned into something. But Tessa was behind that counter, and she was alone. And if he left now, he couldn't. He just couldn't. Hey, Noah said, stepping forward, keeping his voice level. Come on, guys. She said they're closed. Let's just call it a night. All three men turned to look at him, and Noah felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Briggs' eyes narrowed, reassessing. The fire hydrant's grin widened. The tweaker just looked annoyed, like Noah was an obstacle he hadn't planned for. This ain't your business, Briggs said slowly, taking a step toward Noah. Unless you're trying to make it your business. Noah held his ground, though everything in him wanted to back up. I'm just saying, the lady asked you to leave. It's late. Let's all just go home. For a moment, just one moment, Noah thought it might work. Thought maybe these guys would decide it wasn't worth the trouble, that they'd turn around and walk back out into the rain. Then Briggs laughed. You her boyfriend or something? He asked, jerking his head toward Tessa. That it? You trying to be a hero? I'm trying to get home to my kid, Noah said. And I'm guessing she's trying to get home too. So let me tell you something, hero, Briggs interrupted, taking another step closer. He was right in Noah's face now, close enough that Noah could smell the alcohol on his breath, stale beer, and something sharper. You walk out that door right now, and maybe you get to see your kid again. Maybe. Or you can stay here and try to save this bitch, and I promise you, that's the last thing you'll ever do. Noah's fists clenched. He'd been in fights before, not many, but enough to know how they started, enough to know that once the first punch was thrown, everything changed. He looked past Briggs to Tessa, saw the fear in her eyes, saw her hand trembling even as she tried to keep her expression neutral. He looked back at Briggs. I'm not leaving, Noah said quietly. Briggs's face twisted into something ugly. Then you're stupider than you look. He turned away from Noah dismissively, as if the threat had been neutralized, and started walking toward the counter. The fire hydrant moved toward the door, positioning himself in front of it, blocking the exit. The tweaker was still circling, moving down the aisles, and Noah heard the sound of something falling, a can hitting the floor. Tessa backed up until she hit the wall behind the counter. Please, she said, and now her voice was shaking. Please, just take whatever you want. The register. There's maybe $200 in it. Just take it and go. $200, Briggs repeated, like he was considering it. He reached the counter and leaned on it, his weight making the whole thing creak. That's real generous of you, but see, we didn't come here for money. He reached across the counter fast and grabbed Tessa's wrist. She gasped, trying to pull away, but his grip was iron. Noah started forward, but the fire hydrant was suddenly there, shoving him back. The fire hydrant said. You stay right there, hero. Let her go, Noah said, trying to move around him, but the guy was surprisingly quick for his size. He shoved Noah again, harder this time, and Noah stumbled back against a shelf, sending bags of chips cascading to the floor. At the counter, Briggs pulled Tessa closer, so close that she had to bend forward over the counter or risk having her arm broken. You're real pretty, You know that? He said, his voice dropping to something that was almost conversational, which somehow made it worse. Real pretty. Bet you get lots of guys in here trying to talk to you, trying to get your number. Please, Tessa whispered. Tears were streaming down her face now. Please don't. Briggs reached up with his free hand and grabbed the collar of her shirt, a simple green polo with the store's logo embroidered on it. For a second, Noah thought he was just going to hold it, just going to threaten her. Then he yanked, hard. The fabric tore with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the small store, a ripping that went on for half a second too long. Tessa's gasp turned into a sob, and she tried to cover herself, but Briggs still had her wrist, and she couldn't pull away. The fire hydrant laughed, that same wet, ugly sound. The tweaker appeared at the end of an aisle, grinning now, high on something and feeding off the chaos. Noah felt something break inside him, not break like shatter, but break like a dam, like everything he'd been holding back for 3 years. All the frustration and exhaustion and rage at the unfairness of everything, at having to work himself to death just to keep a roof over his daughter's head, at his ex-wife who'd left when things got hard, at a world that let men like this exist. He started toward Briggs, didn't even care anymore about the fire hydrant, or the tweaker, or the fact that this was going to end badly. All he could see was Tessa's face. All he could hear was that sob. The fire hydrant grabbed him, spun him around, and drove a fist into his stomach. The air exploded out of Noah's lungs, and he doubled over, pain radiating from his core. Another hit, this one to his ribs, and he dropped to one knee. I told you, the fire hydrant said, standing over him. I told you to stay out of it. Noah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He tried to stand, tried to push himself up, but his body wasn't cooperating. Through the spots dancing in his vision, he could see Briggs still holding Tessa, could hear her crying, could hear footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming from the back of the store. The tweaker noticed first. Hey, he said, his voice sharp with alarm. Hey, we ain't alone. Briggs looked up, annoyed. What? There's someone, and then they stepped into view. 3 of them, emerging from the back seating area like ghosts materializing out of fog. They moved slowly, unhurried, their boots clicking against the linoleum floor with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. The fluorescent lights gleamed off leather jackets, off chrome belt buckles, off the kind of faces that had seen things and done things and weren't particularly bothered by violence. The first one was tall and broad-shouldered, maybe 55 or 60, with a gray beard that was neatly trimmed and eyes that were the color of steel. He wore a black leather vest over a white t-shirt, and his arms were marked with tattoos that looked military, eagles and flags and names Noah couldn't read from where he was kneeling. There was something about the way he moved that spoke of absolute confidence, the kind that came not from ego but from experience, from knowing exactly what you were capable of and what you were willing to do. Behind him came a shorter man, maybe 5'9", but built like a tank. His head was completely shaved, and he had a scar running from his left eyebrow down to his cheek, the kind of scar that came from something sharp and intentional. He was older too, probably mid-50s, and he wasn't smiling. He was just watching, his hands loose at his sides, ready. The third was younger, maybe 40, with long hair pulled back in a ponytail, and a beard that was more red than brown. He was wiry rather than big, but there was something in his eyes, something a little wild, a little dangerous, that suggested he might be the most unpredictable of the 3. They stopped about 10 feet from where Briggs stood at the counter, forming a loose line, and the store suddenly felt much smaller. The air felt heavier, charged with a kind of tension that made Noah's skin prickle. For a moment, just a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then the gray-bearded one, the leader, obviously, looked at Briggs, looked at the hand still gripping Tessa's wrist, looked at the torn shirt, at the tears on her face. When he spoke, his voice was low and calm, the kind of calm that was more terrifying than any shout. Son, he said, you're going to let go of her. Briggs stared at him, trying to process this new development, trying to figure out if this was a threat he needed to take seriously. Noah, still kneeling on the floor with one hand pressed to his ribs, could see the calculation happening behind Briggs' eyes. 3 against 3, probably armed, definitely dangerous, definitely not what he'd expected when he walked into this store. This ain't your problem, old man, Briggs said, But there was a new edge to his voice now, something that wasn't quite as confident as before. The gray-bearded biker, Noah would learn later that his name was Stone Maddox, that he'd been a Marine for 20 years before he'd found a different kind of brotherhood on the road, tilted his head slightly, like he was considering Briggs' words. "Actually," Stone said, "I think it is." And then everything happened at once. Briggs, maybe out of stupidity or pride or just bad instincts, didn't let go of Tessa. Instead, he pulled her closer, like he thought he could use her as a shield, like he thought these men would care about collateral damage. He was wrong. Stone moved faster than anyone his age had any right to move. 1 second he was 10 feet away, the next he was right there, his hand shooting out and grabbing Briggs' wrist, the one holding Tessa, and twisting. The movement was precise, practiced, the kind of thing you learned in training and perfected through repetition. Briggs yelled, his grip on Tessa breaking involuntarily as pain shot up his arm, and Stone used the momentum to spin him around and drive him face first into the counter. The impact was sickening, a crunch of cartilage and bone that made Noah wince even from where he was. Briggs bounced off the counter and dropped, blood already pouring from his nose, his eyes glazed and unfocused. The fire hydrant, seeing his friend go down, forgot about Noah and charged at Stone, bellowing something incoherent. He didn't make it 3 steps. The bald one, the tank, intercepted him with a shoulder block that would have made a linebacker proud. The fire hydrant went sprawling, hitting the floor hard enough to rattle the shelves. Before he could get up, the bald biker was on him, knee in his back, one arm twisted up between his shoulder blades in a hold that had the fire hydrant screaming. The tweaker, seeing how quickly this had gone wrong, did the only smart thing any of them had done all night. He ran. He bolted for the door, slipped past where the fire hydrant had been standing, and was out into the rain before anyone could stop him. They heard his footsteps splashing through the parking lot, fading into the night. And then it was over, just like that. Seconds. Maybe less. The violence had erupted and subsided so quickly that Noah's brain was still trying to catch up. He pushed himself to his feet, wincing at the pain in his ribs, and looked around at the aftermath. Briggs was on the floor, groaning, his hands covering his face as blood seeped between his fingers. The fire hydrant was pinned by the bald biker, making whimpering sounds that didn't match his size. And the 3 bikers stood over them, breathing steady, like this was just another Thursday night. Stone turned to look at Tessa, and his entire demeanor changed. The lethal calm was still there, but it was tempered now with something gentler, something almost paternal. He took a step toward the counter, moving slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "Hey," he said softly. "You hurt?" Tessa was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Her arms were wrapped around herself, trying to hold together what was left of her torn shirt, and tears were streaming down her face. But she shook her head. No, she managed. I'm okay." Stone nodded, then looked at the bald biker. "Vic, call the cops. Tell them we got 2 for them." He glanced at the door where the tweaker had fled. "1 ran, but they can probably catch him if they move fast." Vic, the bald one, pulled out a cell phone and started dialing, keeping his knee firmly planted in the fire hydrant's back. Stone looked at Noah next, his eyes scanning him quickly, assessing. "You all right?" Noah nodded, even though his ribs were screaming, and he was pretty sure he'd have bruises in the morning. "Yeah, thanks. You were about to get yourself killed," Stone said, but there was no judgment in it, just a statement of fact. 3 against 1, and at least one of them was carrying. He nodded toward Briggs, where the outline of a knife was visible in his pocket. "But you stood up anyway. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes both." Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded again. The younger biker, the one with the ponytail, was watching Tessa with concern. "You got someone you can call?" he asked her. "Manager? Family? You shouldn't be here alone after this." Tessa nodded shakily. My roommate. I can call her." "Good," Stone said. "Do that. And maybe think about not working closing shift alone anymore. Place like this neighborhood." He shook his head. "That's asking for trouble." In the distance, sirens began to wail, growing louder. Vic must have told them it was urgent because they were coming fast. Stone looked at his companions and jerked his head toward the door. "Time to go," he said. What about them? Vic asked, nodding at the two men on the floor. Cops will handle it, Stone said. We were just in the wrong place at the right time. Or the right place at the right time, depending on how you look at it. He started for the door, his boots crunching over spilled chips and broken merchandise. The other two followed, stepping over Briggs like he was just another piece of trash on the floor. Noah watched them go, these three men who had appeared out of nowhere, and changed everything in the space of heartbeats. At the door, Stone paused and looked back at Tessa one more time. You be safe, he said simply. Then they were gone, out into the rain, and seconds later Noah heard the roar of motorcycle engines firing up, a deep-throated rumble that cut through the storm. The sirens were getting closer now, maybe 2 blocks away, and the 3 bikes pulled out of the parking lot and disappeared down the street, their taillights fading into the darkness. Noah moved to the counter, keeping his distance so Tessa wouldn't feel threatened, and picked up the phone that was mounted on the wall. You want me to call your roommate? He asked gently. Tessa nodded, then shook her head, then started crying again, really crying this time, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Noah looked away, giving her privacy, and listened to Briggs groan on the floor. The first police car pulled into the parking lot 30 seconds later, lights flashing blue and red through the store windows. 2 officers came in with hands on their weapons, ready for a scene, and found 2 men on the floor and 2 shocked civilians standing among the wreckage. It took 20 minutes to sort out what had happened. The officers separated Noah and Tessa, took their statements individually, called for an ambulance for Briggs, whose nose was definitely broken, and for backup to transport both men once they were cleared. A female officer sat with Tessa in one of the police cars, wrapped in a blanket even though it wasn't cold, and Noah watched through the window as Tessa talked and cried and talked some more. One of the officers, a sergeant with kind eyes and 20 years on his face, came over to where Noah was sitting on the curb and sat down next to him. Hell of a night, the sergeant said. Yeah, Noah agreed. You did good, the sergeant said. Standing up like that? Most people would have walked out. Noah thought about Emma, asleep at home, probably curled up with that stuffed rabbit she refused to sleep without. He thought about how close he'd come to never seeing her again. I couldn't leave her, he said simply. The sergeant nodded like he understood. The bikers, he said. You get a good look at them? Noah shrugged. It happened fast. 3 guys, leather jackets, one had a gray beard. That's about all I remember. It wasn't entirely true. Noah remembered Stone's face with perfect clarity, remembered the calm in those steel-gray eyes, but something told him that these men probably didn't want to be found, didn't want to be heroes, didn't want their names in a police report. They'd done what needed doing and then left, and somehow that felt right. The sergeant smiled slightly, like he knew Noah was holding back but didn't particularly care. Yeah, he said. That's what the girls said too. Funny how nobody seems to remember much detail. Funny, Noah agreed. It was almost 1:30 in the morning by the time the police finally let them go. The store manager had shown up, frantic and apologetic, and had immediately told Tessa she was taking the rest of the week off with pay and that he was hiring security for night shifts. Tessa's roommate had arrived too, a tough-looking woman with a nose ring who'd hugged Tessa and glared at the cops like this was somehow their fault. Noah retrieved his milk and cereal from where he'd set them down, miraculously undamaged despite everything, and headed for his car. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the parking lot slick and gleaming under the streetlights. He was unlocking his door when he heard footsteps behind him. Hey, Tessa said. She'd changed her shirt, her roommate had brought her clothes, and her eyes were red from crying, but she was standing straight, holding herself together. I just wanted to say thank you, for staying, for trying to help. Anyone would have done the same, Noah said, though they both knew that wasn't true. No, Tessa said firmly. They wouldn't have. Most people would have walked out. You stayed. She paused, then added, Those bikers, they saved us. But you were going to fight for me anyway, weren't you? Even though you knew you couldn't win. Noah didn't know how to answer that, so he just shrugged. You okay? He asked instead. I mean, I know you're not okay, but you know what I mean. Tessa almost smiled. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'll be okay. Eventually. She took a breath. My roommate's going to stay with me tonight. And I'm probably going to find a new job. I don't think I can come back here. I don't blame you, Noah said. He opened his car door, then paused. Hey, those bikers, I don't know who they were, but they showed up at exactly the right time. Almost like they were watching, Tessa finished. I know, I've been thinking about that too. They were in the back this whole time, just sitting there, and they waited until... She trailed off. Until you really needed them, Noah said softly. They stood there for a moment in the parking lot, two people who'd survived something together, who'd seen humanity at its worst and its best in the span of 15 minutes. Take care of yourself, Noah said finally. You too, Tessa replied. And thank you. Again. Noah drove home through streets that were mostly empty, the city sleeping around him. The clock on his dashboard read 1:47 a.m., and he thought about how Emma would already be asleep, how she'd never know how close she'd come to losing him tonight. The babysitter's car was in front of his apartment building, and he'd have to wake her up and pay her for the extra hours, but that was okay. Everything was okay. He carried his groceries upstairs, moving quietly so he wouldn't wake Emma. The babysitter, Mrs. Chen from down the hall, was asleep on the couch, and he gently woke her and apologized profusely for being so late. She waved off his apologies, took the money he offered plus extra, and shuffled back to her own apartment. Noah stood in the doorway to Emma's room, watching his daughter sleep. She was sprawled across her bed, one leg sticking out from under the covers, her rabbit clutched in one arm. She looked peaceful, innocent, unaware that her father had just stared down 3 violent men and lived to tell about it because 3 strangers in leather jackets had decided that tonight, in this store, they were going to stand up for what was right. He thought about Stone Maddox. He didn't know the name yet, but he'd think of him as Stone for the rest of his life. And the way those steel-gray eyes had assessed the situation and made a decision in seconds. He thought about the speed and precision of their movements, the way they'd dismantled threats that had seemed insurmountable just moments before. He thought about how they'd asked if Tessa was okay, how Stone's voice had gentled when he spoke to her, how they'd left before the police arrived because they didn't need recognition or thanks or anything except to know they'd done the right thing. Noah closed Emma's door quietly and went to his own room. He'd shower in the morning. Right now, he just needed to lie down, to close his eyes, to let the adrenaline finally drain from his system. His ribs hurt, his stomach hurt, and he'd probably have to explain the bruises to Emma somehow without scaring her. But he was alive. Tessa was safe. And somewhere out there in the city, 3 bikers were riding through the night, carrying their own stories, their own scars, their own reasons for doing what they'd done. Noah fell asleep thinking about them, about the kind of people who sat quietly in the shadows of convenience stores, watching and waiting, ready to step in when darkness threatened to win, about the kind of people who asked for nothing and expected nothing and did what needed doing simply because it was right. He dreamed of motorcycles and rain, of leather and steel, of 3 men who'd taught him something important that night. Heroes didn't always come in uniforms. Sometimes they walked out of the shadows wearing their own ghosts, carrying their own pain, choosing, quietly, to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Sometimes they were exactly where they needed to be, at exactly the right time. And sometimes that made all the difference in the world. The morning came too soon, dragging Noah out of a sleep that felt like it had lasted minutes instead of hours. Emma was already awake. He could hear her singing to herself in the kitchen, something about princesses and castles that she'd learned at school. He groaned and pushed himself up, immediately regretting it as pain shot through his ribs. The bruises had blossomed overnight, dark purple spreading across his stomach and side like spilled ink. He pulled on a sweatshirt to hide the damage and shuffled into the kitchen, where Emma was sitting at their small table with a bowl of dry cereal in front of her. She looked up when he entered, her face lighting up in that way that still made his heart feel too big for his chest. "Daddy, you got the cereal!" She pointed at the box on the counter, the one with the cartoon tiger that he'd bought approximately 6 hours ago in what felt like another lifetime. "Yeah, baby," Noah said, his voice still rough with sleep. "Told you I would. Can I have some now? With milk?" Noah poured her a bowl, added the milk he'd risked his life for, and sat down across from her with coffee that was too weak because he'd run out of the good stuff 3 days ago. Emma chattered about school, about her friend Madison, who'd brought her puppy for show and tell, about how her teacher had said they were going to learn about butterflies next week. Noah listened, made the appropriate sounds of interest, and tried not to think about Briggs' hand on Tessa's collar, about that tearing sound, about how differently this morning could have gone. "Daddy? Are you okay?" Noah blinked and realized Emma was staring at him with concern that looked wrong on a 7-year-old's face. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just tired. Had to work late." "You're always tired," Emma said matter-of-factly, then went back to her cereal. She wasn't wrong. Noah got Emma ready for school, made her lunch with the last of the bread and some peanut butter that was probably past its prime but still passed the smell test, and walked her to the bus stop 3 blocks away. Other parents were there, mostly mothers, a few fathers, and they nodded politely at Noah, the way people did when they recognized someone but didn't really know them. He nodded back, kept one hand on Emma's shoulder, and waited until the yellow bus rounded the corner and his daughter climbed aboard, waving at him from the window. Then he went back to his apartment, took 3 ibuprofen, and stared at his phone for 5 minutes before finally calling the warehouse to tell them he wasn't coming in. His supervisor, a decent guy named Marcus who'd worked there for 15 years, didn't give him grief about it, just told him to rest up and come back Monday. Noah suspected Marcus knew something was wrong, but was too professional to pry, and he was grateful for it. The apartment felt too quiet with Emma gone. Noah tried to sleep more but couldn't, his mind replaying the previous night on an endless loop. He kept seeing Tessa's face, kept hearing that sob, kept feeling the fire hydrant's fist driving into his stomach. But he also kept seeing Stone Maddox, that gray beard, those steel eyes, the absolute confidence in every movement. The way he'd said, "Son, you're going to let go of her," like it wasn't a request but a simple statement of how the universe was going to unfold. Around noon, Noah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, probably a spam call, but something made him pick up. "Hello? Mr. Jensen?" A woman's voice, professional, warm. "This is Detective Sarah Reeves with the Metro Police Department. I'm calling about the incident last night at Mike's corner store. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Noah sat up straighter, wincing at his ribs. "Yeah, of course. I wanted to follow up on your statement," Detective Reeves said. "The 2 suspects are in custody, and we've apprehended the third. He was found sleeping in his car about 6 blocks from the store. They're being charged with attempted robbery, assault, and a few other things. The DA thinks it's a solid case." "That's good," Noah said. "It is. Thanks in large part to you and to the 3 men who intervened." A pause. "Speaking of which, I don't suppose you've remembered any additional details about them? Names, maybe? Anything that might help us locate them for a formal statement?" Noah thought about Stone's face, about the way those 3 bikers had vanished into the rain like smoke. "No," he said carefully. "Like I told the officer last night, it all happened really fast. I just remember they were bikers, and they helped." Another pause, longer this time. "Right," Detective Reeves said, and Noah could hear the smile in her voice, like she knew exactly what he was doing and didn't particularly mind. "Well, if anything else comes to you, here's my number." She rattled it off, and Noah pretended to write it down. "And Mr. Jensen, what you did last night, standing up when most people would have walked away, that took courage. I hope you know that." "I didn't really do anything," Noah said. "Those bikers, they're the ones who saved us." "You stayed," Detective Reeves said simply. "That's not nothing." After she hung up, Noah sat on his couch for a long time, staring at nothing. He thought about calling his ex-wife, thought about telling her what had happened, thought about maybe hearing her voice, even if it would probably just lead to another argument about money or custody or all the ways their marriage had failed. But he didn't call. Sarah had made her choice 3 years ago, and he'd made his peace with it, mostly. The afternoon drifted by. Noah ate leftover pizza for lunch, cold from the fridge because he didn't have the energy to heat it up. He tried to watch TV but couldn't focus. Around 3 o'clock, he realized he hadn't heard from Tessa, hadn't thought to ask for her number, or any way to check if she was okay. He pulled up the number for Mike's corner store on his phone, stared at it for a minute, then called. A man answered, harried and stressed. "Mike's." "Hi, yeah. Is Tessa working today?" "Tessa's got the week off. Can I help you with something?" "No, I just..." I was there last night when Noah trailed off, not sure how to explain. The man's voice softened immediately. Oh. Oh, you're the guy who stayed. Hang on. There was a rustling sound, like he was moving to somewhere more private. I'm Mike. I own the place. I wanted to thank you for what you did. Tessa told me everything. If you hadn't been there, the bikers were the ones who stopped it, Noah interrupted. Maybe, Mike said. But you stood up first. That matters. He paused. Listen, if you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you come by the store. Coffee, food, whatever. It's on the house. Forever. I mean that. Noah didn't know what to say. That's really not necessary. It is to me, Mike said firmly. Tessa's like a niece to me. I hired her when she was 19 and needed a job, watched her work her way through community college. If something had happened to her, his voice cracked slightly. Just thank you. And if you do want to reach out to her, I can pass along your number. She mentioned she'd like to thank you properly. Sure, Noah said. Yeah, that would be good. They exchanged numbers, and Mike promised to text Tessa. Noah hung up and felt something loosen in his chest, some knot he hadn't realized was there. Tessa was okay. She had people who cared about her, who were making sure she wasn't alone. That mattered somehow. His phone buzzed 10 minutes later. Another unknown number, but this time with a text. Hi, this is Tessa from the store. Mike gave me your number. I know I already said it, but thank you for everything. I'm doing okay, just shaken up. My roommate says I should see a therapist, and she's probably right. Anyway, I wanted you to know I'm okay. And to say thank you again. Noah typed back. Glad you're okay. Take care of yourself. He almost left it at that, but then added, those bikers, I keep thinking about them. About how they knew exactly when to step in. Like they'd seen this kind of thing before. The response came quickly. I've been thinking about that too. The one with the gray beard. When he looked at me after, there was something in his eyes. Like he understood. Like he'd seen bad things happen and decided he wasn't going to let it happen again. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Noah typed back. I wish I could thank them, Tessa wrote. I don't even know their names. Noah stared at his phone for a long moment, then typed. Maybe that's how they want it. Maybe they're not looking for thanks. Maybe, Tessa replied, but I'm still grateful. And I'm grateful for you too. You didn't have to stay, but you did. They texted for a few more minutes, casual conversation that felt important somehow, like they were two people who'd survived something together and needed to confirm that the other was still standing. Eventually, Tessa said her roommate was making her watch comedies and eat ice cream, and Noah told her that sounded like exactly the right prescription. Emma came home at 4:30, bursting through the door with stories about butterflies and how they went from caterpillars, and wasn't that amazing, Daddy? Wasn't that the coolest thing? Noah agreed that it was indeed the coolest thing and helped her with homework that involved a lot of coloring and not much actual academic content. They had spaghetti for dinner, the cheap kind from a jar, and Emma talked more about Madison's puppy, and could they maybe get a puppy? Please, please, please. We'll see, Noah said, which was parent speak for, probably not, but I don't want to have this argument right now. After Emma went to bed, Noah stood on the small balcony of their apartment and looked out over the city. The rain had returned softer this time, and the streets gleamed with reflected light from street lamps and passing cars. Somewhere out there, Stone Maddox and his two companions were doing what? Riding through the night, sitting in another corner store, watching, living their lives, carrying whatever burdens had led them to that particular place at that particular time. Noah found himself wondering about them with an intensity that surprised him. Who were they? Where did they come from? What had shaped them into the kind of men who could move like that? Who could dismantle threats with such precision? Who could shift from lethal to gentle in the space of a breath? He went inside and opened his laptop, an ancient thing that took 3 minutes to boot up, and pulled up Google. He typed in Stone Maddox Biker and got nothing useful. He tried Graybeard Biker Metro City and got a bunch of generic results about motorcycle clubs and beard care products. He tried a few more searches, each more specific than the last, and came up empty every time. It was like they didn't exist, like they were ghosts who'd appeared long enough to set the world right, and then vanished back into whatever shadows they'd come from. Noah was about to close his laptop when he thought of something else. He typed in Biker Club's Metro City Veterans, and this time he got results. There were several veteran motorcycle clubs in the area, groups of former military who rode together, who found brotherhood in the rumble of engines and the freedom of the open road. Some were formal organizations with websites and charity events. Others were more informal, just groups of guys who got together on weekends. One name kept appearing in the search results: Iron Brotherhood MC. They were a veteran-owned club, according to their sparse website, dedicated to supporting former military members and their families. The website had a few photos: men in leather vests, American flags, motorcycles lined up in formation. None of the faces looked familiar, but something about the photos felt right. The way these men stood, the way they carried themselves. It reminded Noah of Stone. He clicked through to a news article from 2 years ago. Local motorcycle club raises $50,000 for veterans shelter. There was a photo of a group of bikers presenting a giant check to someone in a suit. Noah zoomed in, scanning faces. There, in the back, partially obscured by another man, was that a gray beard? He couldn't be sure, but his gut told him yes. Another article from 6 months ago: Bikers escort bullied teen to school. A feel-good piece about how a local motorcycle club had learned about a high school student who was being harassed and had shown up one morning with 20 bikes to escort him to class. The bullying had stopped immediately. No names were mentioned in the article, and the photo was taken from far away. But again, Noah felt like he recognized something in the way those men stood. He spent another hour going down internet rabbit holes, finding fragments and pieces, stories that might or might not be connected. A news report about bikers who'd chased down a hit-and-run driver, an interview with a veteran who credited his motorcycle club with saving his life after he'd come home from Afghanistan with PTSD. A blurry video someone had posted on social media of 3 bikers helping an elderly woman change a tire on the side of the highway. None of it was conclusive. None of it gave him names or proof, but all of it painted a picture of men who moved through the world quietly doing what needed to be done, who showed up when they were needed and left before anyone could thank them properly. Noah finally closed his laptop around midnight and went to bed. He dreamed again of motorcycles and rain, but this time the dreams were different. This time he was riding too, part of that brotherhood, feeling the wind and the power and the absolute freedom of the road. He woke up at 3 a.m. with his heart racing and the strange certainty that his life had changed somehow, that last night in that corner store had cracked something open inside him that he couldn't quite name. Saturday morning brought sunshine, rare for this time of year. Emma wanted to go to the park, and Noah agreed even though his ribs still hurt and he was running on maybe 4 hours of sleep. They went to the small playground 6 blocks from their apartment, where Emma immediately made friends with 2 other kids and disappeared onto the jungle gym. Noah sat on a bench and watched her play, and he thought about protection, about what it meant to be a father, to be a guardian, to stand between someone you loved and the darkness. He thought about how he'd been willing to fight 3 men, even though he'd known he couldn't win, because the alternative, walking away while someone suffered, was simply not something he could live with. And he thought about Stone Maddox, who'd made that same choice, but had the skills and experience to back it up. Who'd seen Tessa in danger and had acted without hesitation, without concern for his own safety, without needing to know her name or her story or whether she deserved his help. The help was simply given, freely and completely, because it was right. Mr. Jensen? Noah looked up and nearly fell off the bench. Standing in front of him, wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt that showed muscular arms covered in tattoos, was the bald biker from last night. Vic, Stone had called him. Up close, in daylight, he looked older than Noah had thought, maybe mid-50s, and the scar on his face was even more pronounced. But his eyes were kind, and he was holding 2 cups of coffee. "I hope I'm not bothering you," Vic said, his voice a deep rumble. "Saw you sitting here and thought you might want some decent coffee." He offered one of the cups. "It's from the good place on 5th Street. Black, 2 sugars." "That's how I take mine. Figured it was a safe bet." Noah took the coffee automatically, his brain struggling to process this. "How did you find you?" Vic smiled slightly. Your truck's got a warehouse company sticker on the back window. Made a call, got a general idea of where their drivers live, drove around until I spotted it. He nodded toward Noah's vehicle, parked on the street. Hope that's not too creepy. Stone wanted to make sure you were okay. Said you took a couple of good hits last night. I'm fine, Noah said, just bruised. Vic gestured to the bench. Mind if I sit? No, go ahead. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Emma play. She'd organized the other kids into some kind of elaborate game that involved a lot of running and shrieking. Noah sipped the coffee. It was excellent, rich and strong, exactly what he needed, and tried to figure out what to say. Your daughter? Vic asked. Yeah, Emma. She's 7. Good age, Vic said. I've got grandkids around that age, 3 of them. Drive me crazy and I wouldn't trade them for anything. More silence. It wasn't uncomfortable, exactly, but Noah felt like there was something he was supposed to say, some response expected of him, and he didn't know what it was. Finally, Vic spoke again. Last night, he said, when you stepped up, that was either very brave or very stupid, and I haven't decided which. Probably stupid, Noah admitted. Maybe, Vic agreed, but it was also right. Stone said you were about to charge Briggs when I pulled you back. Said you were ready to go through me and anyone else to get to that girl. Noah didn't deny it. That's rare, Vic said quietly. Most people, and I'm not judging because it's a normal survival instinct, most people would have walked out, would have convinced themselves it wasn't their problem, that someone else would handle it, that getting involved would just make things worse. And 99 times out of 100, they'd probably be right. But that one time, he shook his head. That one time, somebody has to stand up. Somebody has to be willing to put themselves between the darkness and the light. You guys did that, Noah said. Not me. I don't know what I was. Scared and angry and not thinking straight. You were being a protector, Vic said. Same as us. Difference is, we've had training, we've got experience, we know how to handle situations like that without getting ourselves killed. You didn't have any of that, but you were ready to do it anyway. He took a long drink of his coffee. Stone wanted me to tell you something. He said, and these are his exact words, that man's got the heart, just needs to learn how to use it without getting his skull caved in. Noah almost laughed. Is that a compliment? From Stone? Yeah, it is. Vic turned to look at him directly. Look, I'm not trying to recruit you or anything like that, but I am saying that if you ever want to learn, really learn, how to protect people, how to handle yourself in bad situations, how to be the kind of man who can stand between someone and violence without it being a suicide mission, well, Iron Brotherhood runs classes. Classes? Self-defense, mostly, some tactical training. We get a lot of veterans dealing with PTSD and physical training helps. But we also get regular guys, fathers, husbands, people who work regular jobs, who want to know how to keep their families safe. Stone teaches most of it. He was a Marine for 20 years, 3 tours, special operations. Knows more about handling violence than anyone I've ever met. Vic reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. That's got the address of our clubhouse. We meet Tuesday and Thursday nights, 7 o'clock. You're welcome to stop by. No obligation, no pressure, just an offer. Noah took the card. It was simple black with white lettering. Iron Brotherhood MC, an address, and a phone number. Nothing fancy. I don't know, Noah said honestly. I've got Emma and work and... I get it, Vic said, standing up. Like I said, no pressure, but the offer stands. And Noah? He waited until Noah looked up at him. What you did last night mattered. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You stepped up when it counted, and that girl's alive because you and Stone and the rest of us were all in the right place at the right time. He drained his coffee cup, tossed it in a nearby trash can with perfect accuracy, and walked away. Noah watched him go. Watched him climb onto a motorcycle that had been parked 3 spots down from Noah's truck, close enough that Noah should have noticed it, would have noticed it if he hadn't been so focused on Emma. The engine roared to life, that same deep rumble from last night, and Vic raised one hand in farewell before pulling away. Noah looked down at the card in his hand, turned it over. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were 3 words, "Heroes are made." Emma ran over a few minutes later, red-faced and happy, demanding to know if they could get ice cream. Noah said yes. Why not? It was Saturday, and they walked to the little shop 2 blocks away. While Emma deliberated between chocolate and strawberry with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice, Noah kept touching the card in his pocket, feeling its weight, thinking about what Vic had said. Training. Learning how to be a protector without getting yourself killed. It sounded good. It sounded right. But it also sounded like a commitment, like time he didn't really have, like one more thing on a plate that was already overflowing. But then he thought about Tessa's face, about that moment when he'd known he was going to fight those men, even though he'd known he'd lose. And he thought about Emma, about what would happen to her if something happened to him, about how being brave wasn't enough if you didn't survive the bravery. They got ice cream, Emma chose chocolate after all, and walked home slowly, enjoying the sunshine. Noah let Emma talk about her day, about the games she'd played, about how she'd made a new friend named Jessica who had the same shoes as her, which was apparently very important. And in the back of his mind, he kept turning over that card, those 3 words, heroes are made. Sunday passed quietly. Noah and Emma had their usual routine, pancakes for breakfast, cartoons for a while, then some half-hearted cleaning because the apartment was getting messy even by Noah's admittedly low standards. In the afternoon, they went grocery shopping, and Noah found himself buying things they didn't usually get. Fresh vegetables instead of frozen, actual fruit instead of fruit snacks, ingredients for meals that would take longer than 15 minutes to make. Emma noticed, "Are you feeling okay, Daddy?" "Yeah, baby. Why?" "You bought broccoli. You never buy broccoli." Noah looked down at his cart and realized she was right. When had he stopped caring about things like nutrition? When had good enough become his standard for everything? Around the time Sarah left, probably. Around the time he'd gone into survival mode and had never quite come out of it. That night, after Emma was asleep, Noah pulled out his laptop again and searched for Iron Brotherhood MC. This time he went straight to their website, read through every page. There wasn't much. They clearly weren't interested in advertising. But what was there spoke of service and brotherhood and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves? There were photos from charity events, from veteran support groups, from community outreach programs. And there, in one photo, from a memorial service for a fallen veteran, Noah found him. Stone Maddox standing in the back row, his gray beard neatly trimmed, wearing a leather vest covered in patches and pins. He wasn't smiling, but there was something in his eyes, that same calm intensity Noah had seen at the store, that sense of a man who'd seen too much but hadn't let it break him. The caption identified several people by name, but Stone wasn't among them. It was like even in official photos, he preferred to stay in the background, unnoticed and unrecognized. Noah made a decision. He opened his phone and texted the number on the card Vic had given him. "This is Noah Jensen from the other night. What time did you say those classes were?" The response came almost immediately. 7 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday. "Glad you're coming." Vic. Noah stared at his phone for a long moment, then typed back, "I'll see you Tuesday." He spent Monday in a strange state of nervous anticipation, like he'd committed to something significant without fully understanding what it was. Work was normal, back to the warehouse, back to loading trucks and moving pallets and dealing with his supervisor's increasingly frantic demands about productivity quotas. His coworkers noticed the bruises when he lifted his shirt to wipe sweat from his face, and he brushed off their questions with a vague story about slipping on stairs. Marcus, his supervisor, pulled him aside during lunch break. "You sure you're okay? You've been moving slow all morning." "Just sore," Noah said. "I'm fine." Marcus studied him for a moment, and Noah had the uncomfortable feeling he was being evaluated for something. "You're a good worker, Noah," Marcus finally said. "Reliable, never complain. But you look like hell lately, and I don't just mean the bruises. When's the last time you took a real day off? Not called in sick, but actually took time for yourself?" Noah couldn't remember. "I'm fine," he repeated. "That's what everyone says right before they burn out," Marcus said. "Look, I can't force you to take care of yourself, but I'm telling you, as someone who's been doing this job for 15 years, you can't pour from an empty cup. Whatever's going on in your life, you gotta find a way to refill that cup, or you're gonna run dry. And then you won't be good to anyone. Not yourself, not your kid, not this job." It was the most personal conversation Noah had ever had with his supervisor, and it caught him off guard. "I'll think about that," he said. You do that, Marcus said, clapping him on the shoulder. And Noah, whatever you got into over the weekend that gave you those bruises, try to avoid getting into it again. We need you here. Tuesday came faster than Noah expected. He got Emma from school, fed her dinner, and then had the awkward conversation about needing Mrs. Chen to babysit for a few hours. Where are you going? Emma asked, suspicious in the way only children could be. Just a class. Learning some new stuff. What kind of stuff? Exercise stuff, Noah said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Emma accepted this with a shrug. Okay, can Mrs. Chen make cookies with me? If she wants to, Noah said, making a mental note to buy more flour and chocolate chips. He drove to the address on the card, which led him to an industrial area on the east side of the city, the kind of place where old warehouses had been converted into various businesses and workshops. The Iron Brotherhood Clubhouse was in a nondescript building with a steel door and no sign, just an address painted in white numbers. Noah sat in his truck for 5 minutes, trying to calm his nerves, before finally getting out and walking to the door. He knocked, feeling ridiculous. The door opened immediately, and there was Vic, grinning like he'd been waiting right on the other side. Noah, come on in, man. You're right on time. Inside was not what Noah had expected. He'd pictured something out of a movie, dark and smoky, maybe some sketchy characters in corners, but instead it was clean and well lit, with concrete floors that had been painted gray and walls covered in American flags and memorial plaques. There was a small kitchen area in one corner, a lounge with worn but comfortable-looking furniture, and beyond that what looked like a gym or training space. About 15 people were there, ranging in age from mid-20s to maybe 60. Some were obviously veterans. You could tell by the way they carried themselves, that particular military bearing that never quite went away. Others looked like regular civilians, working-class guys in jeans and t-shirts who'd come straight from their jobs. A few were women, which surprised Noah, though he wasn't sure why. And in the center of it all, setting up training mats, was Stone Maddox. He looked up when Noah entered, and something that might have been approval flickered across his face. Noah Jensen, he said, his voice carrying across the room. Glad you came. Vic said you might. Thanks for the invitation, Noah stammered, suddenly feeling like he was 16 again and didn't know how to talk to adults. Stone walked over and extended his hand. Stone Maddox, we didn't do proper introductions the other night. Noah shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the calluses, the quiet strength. Noah Jensen. But you already knew that. I did, Stone agreed. Also know you're a single father, you work at Morrison Warehouse, and you stepped up when most men would have run. That tells me most of what I need to know. He turned to address the room. All right, everyone, let's get started. New faces today, so we'll do introductions first. They went around the circle. Names and backgrounds blurred together. Veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, a firefighter, a school teacher, a mechanic, a nurse. When it was Noah's turn, he kept it simple. Noah, work at a warehouse, father of one. Never done anything like this before. That's honest, Stone said. I like honest. Anyone here who says they're not scared their first time is lying. Fear's natural. It's what you do with the fear that matters. The class started with basics. How to stand, how to move, how to protect your head and vital organs. Stone demonstrated on Vic, moving slowly so everyone could see, explaining the why behind each movement. It wasn't like the action movies Noah had seen, all flash and complicated kicks. This was practical and brutal, designed to create space and escape, not to look cool. Most of you are never going to get into a fight, Stone said as they practiced. And if you do, the best thing you can do is run, get away, get to safety, live to see another day. But sometimes you can't run. Sometimes there's someone behind you that you're protecting, or you're cornered, or the situation doesn't give you a choice. That's what we're preparing for, those times when running isn't an option and you need to know how to survive. They drilled for an hour, simple movements repeated until Noah's muscles burned and sweat soaked through his shirt. His ribs hurt, his legs hurt, everything hurt. But it also felt good, purposeful, like he was building something instead of just surviving. Halfway through, Stone called a water break and walked over to where Noah was catching his breath. How are the ribs? Sore, Noah admitted. Briggs got you good. Fire hydrant hits hard. Stone's expression was neutral. but there was concern in his eyes. You doing okay otherwise after the other night? Noah thought about it. Yeah, I think so. Had some weird dreams, but nothing too bad. That's normal. Adrenaline takes time to process. You find yourself getting angry over small things, or jumpy at loud noises. That's also normal. Give it a week or two. Stone paused. The girl, Tessa, she reach out to you? Yeah, she's doing okay. Shaken up, but okay. Stone nodded. Good. That's good. He looked at Noah with those steel gray eyes, and Noah had the uncomfortable feeling he was being assessed. You know why I do this? These classes, this training, to help people protect themselves? That's part of it, Stone agreed. But it's more than that. It's about creating a community of people who give a damn. People who, when they see someone in trouble, don't just walk by. Don't just assume someone else will handle it. People who step up, who stand between the innocent and the darkness, because that's what decent human beings do. He gestured around the room. Everyone here, every single person, they're here because at some point they decided they wanted to be more than a bystander. And that matters, Noah. That matters more than you know. The words settled over Noah like a weight, but not a heavy one. A grounding one, like something clicking into place. They trained for another hour. By the end, Noah could barely lift his arms, and his legs felt like jelly. But he also felt more alive than he had in months, maybe years. There was something about pushing his body, about learning these skills, about being in a room full of people who'd all made the same choice, to be protectors, to be guardians, to be the kind of people who stepped up, that felt right in a way he couldn't quite articulate. As people started leaving, Vic approached with the younger biker from the store, the one with the ponytail, who Noah learned was named Jake. You did good tonight, Vic said. Real good for a first-timer. I can barely move, Noah admitted. That's how you know you worked, Jake said, grinning. Give it a few weeks. You'll be keeping up with the rest of us. Stone thinks you've got potential. He said that? Didn't have to, Vic said. He doesn't waste time on people he doesn't think will make it. Fact that he spent extra time with you says plenty. Noah looked over to where Stone was rolling up training mats, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. As if sensing Noah's gaze, Stone looked up and nodded once. Just once. But it felt like approval, like recognition. Noah drove home that night with his whole body aching and his mind clearer than it had been in years. He picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen carried his sleeping daughter up to their apartment and tucked her into bed. Then he stood in the doorway of her room, watching her sleep, and made himself a promise. He was going to be better. Not just survive, not just get by, not just make it to the next paycheck. He was going to be the kind of father, the kind of man who could protect what mattered, who could stand up when it counted, who could look his daughter in the eye and know he'd done everything in his power to make the world a little safer, a little better, a little more just. Heroes were made, the card had said. And maybe, just maybe, Noah was starting to understand what that meant. The weeks that followed took on a new rhythm, one that Noah hadn't realized his life was missing. Tuesday and Thursday nights became sacred, non-negotiable blocks of time where he showed up at the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse and pushed himself harder than he'd thought possible. Mrs. Chen didn't ask questions about where he was going, just nodded when he dropped Emma off and had cookies or coloring books ready. Emma seemed happy enough with the arrangement, especially since Mrs. Chen let her stay up an extra 30 minutes past bedtime. Noah threw himself into the training with an intensity that surprised even him. Stone taught them not just how to fight, but how to think during chaos, how to assess threats, how to create distance and find exits. He drilled them on awareness, keeping their heads up, noticing who was around them, reading body language and intent before situations escalated. It was practical and unglamorous, nothing like the movies, and Noah absorbed it all like a man dying of thirst who'd finally found water. By the third week, the soreness that had crippled him after that first session had faded into a dull background ache that felt almost good, like proof that he was changing, adapting, becoming something more than he'd been. His body was responding to the training, muscles remembering movements, reflexes sharpening. Stone had paired him with different partners each night, and Noah found himself learning from everyone, from Vic's patient precision, from Jake's unpredictable energy, from a retired army sergeant named Rodriguez who moved like violence was a language she spoke fluently. But it wasn't just the physical training that changed things. It was the conversations that happened before and after, the coffee shared in the clubhouse kitchen, the stories traded between people who were learning to trust each other. Noah heard about deployments in places he'd only seen on news reports, about coming home to a country that didn't quite know what to do with its veterans, about finding purpose in brotherhood when the structure of military life had been stripped away. He heard about regular people, a school teacher who'd been mugged, a firefighter who'd watched a colleague die, a mechanic who'd grown up in a house where violence was currency, all of them trying to make sense of a world that could be brutal and beautiful in equal measure. And he told them his own story, piece by piece, about Sarah leaving, about trying to be enough for Emma when he barely felt like enough for himself, about that night in the corner store when something inside him had simply refused to walk away. They listened without judgment, these warriors and guardians and ordinary people who'd decided to be extraordinary, and their acceptance felt like armor. Stone rarely spoke about his own past, but pieces emerged in the way he taught, in the comments he made during demonstrations. He'd been in Fallujah, someone mentioned, had done 2 tours in Afghanistan, had seen friends die and had killed men himself, though he never spoke of it with anything resembling pride or shame. Just a quiet acknowledgement that war had been his reality for 2 decades and had shaped him into someone who understood violence at a fundamental level. The thing most people don't get, Stone said one night during a water break, is that violence isn't evil. It's a tool, like any other. Fire can burn your house down or cook your food. A knife can murder or save a life in surgery. Violence is the same. What matters is who's wielding it and why. He looked around at the assembled group, his steel gray eyes moving from face to face. We train because we've decided we're going to be the ones who wield it in defense of the innocent, in protection of those who can't protect themselves. That's not aggression. That's not looking for trouble. That's being prepared to stand in the gap when darkness comes calling. The 4th week brought a shift in Noah's daily life that he hadn't anticipated. He started noticing things he'd never paid attention to before, the way people positioned themselves in enclosed spaces, the exits in every building he entered, the body language of strangers passing on the street. It wasn't paranoia exactly, more like a heightened awareness that Stone had cultivated in all of them. The world looked different when you were actively paying attention to it instead of sleepwalking through your days. At work, Marcus noticed the change. "You've been different lately," he said one afternoon while they were loading a truck. "Can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something. You standing straighter, you lose weight." Noah hadn't lost weight, but he'd definitely gained muscle. His work shirts fit tighter across the shoulders, and the physical labor that used to exhaust him now felt manageable, almost easy. "Just been working out some," he said. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it," Marcus said. "Productivity's up, you're not dragging ass at the end of shifts, and you've got this, I don't know, confidence thing going on. Good for you, man." The confidence thing, as Marcus called it, was real. Noah could feel it in the way he moved through the world, in the way he made eye contact instead of looking away, in the set of his shoulders. He wasn't trying to be intimidating, but there was a difference between someone who knew they could handle themselves and someone who hoped they wouldn't have to find out. Noah was slowly moving from the second category to the first. Emma noticed too, in her own way. "Daddy, you're smiling more," she said one morning over breakfast, the observation delivered with the blunt honesty only 7-year-olds possessed. "Am I?" "Yeah, and you don't look so tired all the time. Are you sleeping better?" Noah realized he was. The nightmares about the store had faded, replaced by dreams that were occasionally strange, but not terrifying. His body was tired from training, but it was a clean tired, the kind that led to deep sleep instead of restless tossing. "Yeah, baby, I think I am." "Good," Emma said, nodding seriously. "You needed to." It was in the 5th week that Noah found himself at the clubhouse on a Saturday afternoon, helping Stone and Vic repair some equipment that had broken during training. They were rebuilding a heavy bag stand, and Noah was holding pieces in place while Stone wielded a welding torch with the casual expertise of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "You ever think about what comes next?" Stone asked, his voice slightly muffled behind the welding mask. "Next?" Noah held the metal steady while sparks flew. "With this, with training, with what you're learning." Stone finished the weld and flipped up his mask, studying the joint with a critical eye. Some people come here for a few months, get what they need, and move on. Others stick around, become part of something bigger. What's bigger? Noah asked. Vic answered from where he was sorting tools. We do community work, not just the classes. We escort kids who are being bullied, like you probably read about. We patrol neighborhoods where the cops can't or won't. We show up when people need help and don't know who else to call. He picked up a wrench, tested its weight. We're not vigilantes. We don't go looking for trouble. But we've got skills and resources, and there are people who fall through the cracks of the system, so we try to catch them. Stone set down the torch and pulled off his gloves. 3 months ago, we got a call from a woman whose ex-husband had violated a restraining order. Cops couldn't do anything until he actually hurt her, which is a hell of a system when you think about it. So 6 of us showed up at her house and had a conversation with the ex. Very polite conversation. Explained that if he came back, the police would be the least of his worries. He hasn't been back. Is that legal? Noah asked. We didn't threaten him, Vic said. Just made our presence known. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes knowing that someone's watching, someone who actually gives a damn, is all it takes to make bad people think twice. Stone studied Noah for a long moment. I'm not asking you to decide anything right now. You've got a kid, you've got a job, you've got responsibilities. But I'm saying there's a place for you here if you want it. If you want to be part of something that matters. Think about it. Noah did think about it constantly over the next few days. He thought about it while loading trucks at the warehouse, while making Emma's lunch, while lying in bed at night listening to the city's sounds through his thin apartment walls. The idea of being part of something larger than himself, something that actively worked to make the world safer, it appealed to him in a way that surprised him with its intensity. But there was also fear. Fear that he'd get in too deep, that he'd end up in situations he couldn't handle, that Emma would end up without a father because he'd decided to play hero. The memory of that night in the corner store was always there. The moment when the fire hydrant's fist had driven into his stomach and he'd realized with absolute clarity that he could die here. That realization hadn't left him. If anything, the training had made it more acute. He knew more now about how quickly violence could turn lethal, how many ways a human body could break. Thursday of the 6th week, Stone pulled Noah aside after class. The others were filtering out, heading home or to late dinners or wherever people went at 9:30 on a weeknight. Jake was wiping down mats and Vic was already on his bike outside, the engine rumbling. Walk with me, Stone said, and it wasn't quite a question. They went outside into the cool evening air. The industrial district was quiet at this hour, just the occasional car passing and the distant sound of a train. Stone pulled out a pack of cigarettes, offered one to Noah, who shook his head. Stone lit one for himself and took a long drag. I'm trying to quit, he said, but some habits die hard. He exhaled smoke into the night. You're thinking about what I said, about becoming more involved. How did you? It's written all over you. You've got that look people get when they're standing at a crossroads and don't know which way to turn. Stone took another drag. Let me tell you something about crossroads. You can stand there forever, weighing options, making pro-con lists, trying to predict every outcome. Or you can accept that you're never going to have perfect information and just pick a direction. Both choices have consequences. The question is which consequences you can live with. Noah leaned against the building wall, feeling the rough brick through his shirt. I've got Emma to think about. You do, Stone agreed. And that's not nothing. Being a father, that's the most important job there is. Nobody's asking you to abandon that. Hell, that's probably why you're good at this. You've already got something worth protecting, something worth standing up for. He flicked ash onto the pavement. But here's what I've learned in 57 years on this planet. You can't protect anyone if you're not whole yourself. If you're just surviving, just getting by, just making it to the next day, you need purpose. You need to feel like you matter, like what you do makes a difference. The warehouse is a paycheck, Stone interrupted. And that's important. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not purpose. It's not the thing that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. It's not the thing you'll remember on your deathbed. He turned to look at Noah directly. That night in the corner store, when you decided to stay, when you decided to stand up even though you knew you were outmatched, that was you finding purpose. maybe for the first time in a long time, and now you're here because you want to feel that again. You want to be someone who matters. The words hit harder than Noah expected, settling into his chest like stones dropping into water, ripples spreading outward. Because Stone was right. The warehouse was just a job, just a way to pay rent and buy groceries and keep the lights on. But this, the training, the brotherhood, the idea that he could be someone who stood between innocent people and darkness, this felt like something more, something that made the struggle feel worthwhile. What would it actually mean? Noah asked quietly. If I said yes to being more involved? Stone dropped his cigarette and ground it out with his boot. Means you're on call when we need people. Means sometimes you'll get a text at 2 in the morning asking if you can show up somewhere. Means you might miss some of Emma's school events or have to reschedule plans. But it also means you're part of a family that's got your back no matter what. Means if you or Emma ever need anything, and I mean anything, you've got 20 people who'll drop everything to help. Means you're not alone anymore. Not alone anymore. Noah hadn't realized how alone he'd felt until Stone said those words. 3 years of single parenting, of making every decision by himself, of having no one to call when things went wrong or when he just needed to hear another adult voice. The loneliness had become so familiar he'd stopped noticing it, like a constant background noise that his brain had learned to filter out. I need to think about it, Noah said. Fair enough, Stone said. Take your time, the offer's not going anywhere. He started walking back toward the clubhouse, then paused. But Noah, don't take too long. Life's short, and the world needs good men willing to stand up. The longer you wait, the more chances pass you by. That weekend, Noah did something he hadn't done in months. He called his ex-wife. Sarah answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Noah? Is Emma okay? She's fine. She's great, actually. He trailed off, not sure how to explain. I wanted to talk to you about something. There was a pause, and he could hear voices in the background, music playing. She was at a party, maybe, or out with friends, living the life she'd left him to find. Okay, she said, the caution deepening into suspicion. What's going on? Noah told her about the corner store, about the training, about the choice he was facing. He didn't expect her to understand, didn't even really expect her to care, but he needed to say it out loud to someone who knew him before all of this, someone who could maybe offer perspective. Sarah was quiet for a long time after he finished. So let me get this straight, she finally said. You almost got yourself killed trying to save some stranger, and now you're thinking about signing up to do that kind of thing regularly? It's not like that. It's about being prepared, being able to help when help is needed. Noah? Sarah's voice was sharp now, the tone she used to use when they'd argue about money or his work hours, or all the little resentments that had built up until their marriage collapsed under the weight. You have a daughter. Emma needs her father. What happens to her if you get yourself killed playing hero? I'm not playing anything, Noah said, frustration rising. This is real. This matters. More than Emma. That's not fair, isn't it? Sarah demanded. You're talking about putting yourself in dangerous situations on purpose. How is that being a good father? Noah took a breath, trying to calm down. Being a good father means showing Emma what it looks like to stand up for what's right. To be someone who doesn't just look away when bad things happen. To have courage and integrity. And, oh, spare me the noble speech, Sarah interrupted. You want to know what I think? I think you're having some kind of midlife crisis. I think you're trying to prove something because you feel like you're not enough. And instead of dealing with that in therapy like a normal person, you're joining some biker gang and learning how to fight. It's not a gang, and I'm not trying to prove... Noah stopped because maybe she was partly right. Maybe he was trying to prove something. Maybe that's what this was all about. You know what? I shouldn't have called. I don't know what I was expecting. Noah, wait! But he'd already hung up. He sat on his couch for a long time after that, staring at nothing, feeling the old anger and hurt churning in his stomach. Sarah had always been good at finding the exact words that would burrow under his skin, that would make him question himself. It was part of why their marriage had failed. Her ability to wound with precision, his tendency to withdraw rather than fight back. But underneath the anger, there was a kernel of truth in what she'd said. Was he doing this for the right reasons? Was this about genuinely wanting to help people? Or was it about trying to prove to himself that he was more than just a single dad working a dead-end job? Was he trying to be a hero to compensate for feeling like a failure? The questions haunted him through the weekend. He took Emma to the park again, watched her play, and tried to imagine how he'd explain to her if something happened to him. "Sorry, baby, but Daddy had to go help some strangers, and things went wrong." Would she understand? Would she think he'd abandoned her the same way her mother had? Sunday evening, Noah was putting Emma to bed when she asked him a question that cut straight through all his uncertainty. "Daddy, what does being brave mean?" Noah sat down on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "Why do you ask?" "We learned about it in school. Ms. Peterson said brave means doing something even when you're scared. But if you're scared, why would you do it?" Noah thought about that night in the corner store, about the moment he'd decided to stay, even though every survival instinct was screaming at him to run. "Because sometimes there are things that matter more than being scared," he said slowly. "Like helping someone who needs help, or protecting someone who can't protect themselves. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do the right thing anyway, even though you're afraid." Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important questions. "Are you brave, Daddy?" "I try to be," Noah said honestly. "I don't always succeed, but I try." "I think you're brave," Emma said. "You work really hard, and you take care of me all by yourself, and you always make sure I'm okay even when you're tired. That's brave." Noah felt something crack open in his chest, a sudden rush of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. He leaned down and kissed Emma's forehead. "Thank you, baby. That means a lot." "Can I be brave too?" "You already are," Noah said. "You're the bravest person I know." After Emma fell asleep, Noah went to his room and pulled out the card Vic had given him all those weeks ago. "Heroes are made." He turned it over and over in his hands, thinking about everything that had happened since that rainy night, about the person he'd been and the person he was becoming. Sarah was wrong. This wasn't a midlife crisis or some desperate attempt to prove his worth. This was about finding purpose in a life that had felt purposeless for too long. This was about becoming someone his daughter could be proud of, someone who didn't just talk about values, but lived them. This was about being part of something bigger than his own small struggles, about standing up and saying, "I will be the one who helps when help is needed." Monday morning, Noah called Stone. The phone rang 3 times before that familiar gravelly voice answered. "Stone, it's Noah Jensen. I've been thinking about what you said, about being more involved." "And?" Noah took a breath. "I'm in. Tell me what I need to do." There was a pause, and when Stone spoke again, there was something in his voice that might have been pride. "Good man. Come by the clubhouse tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. We'll talk details and get you set up properly. And Noah? You made the right choice. I know it doesn't feel certain right now, but trust me, you made the right choice." The next night found Noah back at the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, but this time the atmosphere was different. Instead of the usual training setup, people were gathered in the lounge area, sitting on couches and chairs, coffee cups in hands. It felt less like a class and more like a meeting, formal in a way the training sessions never were. Stone stood when Noah entered, and the conversations died down. "Everyone, Noah Jensen has decided to join us as a full member. Some of you already know him from training, but for those who don't, Noah's the man who stood up at Mike's corner store 6 weeks ago, tried to take on 3 men by himself to protect someone he didn't even know." There were nods of approval around the room. "That's the kind of character we want in Iron Brotherhood. That's the kind of man who makes a difference." Vic stood up next to Stone, holding what looked like a leather vest. "This is yours if you want it," he said, extending it to Noah. "It's not official, not like the ones we wear. You've got to earn that over time. But it's a start. It says you're one of us, that you've committed to this path." Noah took the vest, feeling the weight of it in his hands. It was black leather, simple and unadorned except for a small patch on the back that showed an eagle and the words Iron Brotherhood. It felt significant in a way he couldn't quite articulate, like he was accepting more than just clothing. He was accepting a responsibility, an identity, a purpose. "Thank you," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he'd intended. Stone clapped him on the shoulder. "Welcome to the family. Now, let's talk about what that actually means. They spent the next 2 hours going over protocols and procedures, how the call system worked, group texts that would go out when someone needed help, with details about the situation and how many people were needed, how they vetted situations to make sure they weren't walking into something illegal or unsafe, how they documented everything to protect themselves legally, how they worked with local police in some cases and independently in others. Jake explained the escort protocol for kids being bullied. We don't show up aggressive or threatening. We're just there, visible, a presence that says, this kid is protected. Usually, that's enough. Bullies are cowards. They don't want to mess with someone who's got backup. Rodriguez talked about the neighborhood patrols. We're not trying to replace police. We're supplemental. We walk through areas where people feel unsafe. We check on elderly residents who live alone. We make sure abandoned buildings aren't being used for illegal activity. Think of it as community service with a backbone. Vic covered the domestic situations, calls from people who had restraining orders that weren't being respected, or who were in danger but couldn't prove it yet. These are the most dangerous calls, he said seriously. Domestic violence is unpredictable. The victims are often trauma-bonded to their abusers and might turn on us even when we're trying to help. But these are also the most important calls, because these are people who've fallen through every crack in the system. They've called the police and been told there's nothing that can be done until something actually happens. We're the something that happens before the worst-case scenario. Stone finished with a warning. This is not glamorous work. Most of the time, nothing dramatic happens. We show up, we're a presence, and situations de-escalate. That's the goal, preventing violence, not engaging in it. But sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes people don't back down. Sometimes you'll end up in situations that are dangerous and chaotic and nothing like the controlled environment of training. You need to know that going in. You need to know what you're signing up for. Noah looked around at the assembled faces, these men and women who'd all made the same choice he was making now, who'd all decided that standing up mattered more than staying safe. He thought about Tessa, about how different her life would be right now if no one had been willing to intervene. He thought about Emma, about the kind of world he wanted her to grow up in. I understand, he said. I'm ready. Stone smiled, a rare expression that softened his weathered face. Then let's get you your first assignment. The assignment came sooner than Noah expected. 2 days later, his phone buzzed at 7 in the evening while he was helping Emma with homework. He glanced at it and saw a group text from Stone. Need 4 people for escort duty tomorrow morning. High school student, repeated harassment. Parents requested our help. 6:30 a.m. Briefing at 6. Who's available? Noah stared at the message for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was real now. This was him actually committing to put himself out there, to show up when someone needed help. His heart was racing, adrenaline already starting to flow even though nothing had happened yet. He typed back, I'm available. 3 other responses came quickly. Vic, Jake, and a woman named Sarah who worked as an EMT. Stone sent another message. Good. Noah, this will be your first official action with us. You'll ride with me. Wear something presentable but not threatening. We want to look like concerned citizens, not a gang. Meet at the clubhouse at 6. Emma looked up from her math worksheet. Who are you texting? Just some friends, Noah said, pocketing his phone. I have to leave early tomorrow morning for something. Mrs. Chen will get you ready for school, okay? Okay? Emma went back to her homework, unconcerned, and Noah felt a wave of gratitude that she was still young enough to accept his explanations without suspicion. That night, Noah barely slept. He kept running through scenarios in his head, imagining what could go wrong, remembering the training, trying to prepare himself mentally for whatever tomorrow might bring. At 5 in the morning, he gave up on sleep entirely and got up, showered, put on jeans and a plain black t-shirt and the leather vest Vic had given him. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back, broader in the shoulders, more solid, with an expression that was harder and more determined than the exhausted father who'd looked back at him 3 months ago. He left a note for Mrs. Chen, kissed Emma's sleeping forehead, and drove through the dark morning streets to the clubhouse. Stone was already there, along with Vic, Jake, and Sarah. They were standing around a map spread out on a table, and Stone looked up when Noah entered. Right on time. Good. Come look at this. Stone pointed to the map, which showed a neighborhood on the north side of the city. Student's name is Marcus Chen, 15 years old, sophomore at North Metro High School. He's been getting harassed by a group of seniors for the past 3 months. Started verbal, escalated to physical last week. They jumped him after school, gave him a black eye and some bruises. Parents called the school. School said they'd handle it, but nothing's changed. So the parents called us. Why us specifically? Noah asked. Friend of a friend, Vic said. The dad's cousin is a veteran who knows about what we do. Reached out to ask if we could help. He traced a route on the map. Marcus lives here, school is here, about a 6-block walk. He usually walks alone because his parents both work early shifts. The seniors who've been harassing him know his route and have been waiting for him. So tomorrow morning, he doesn't walk alone. We'll pick him up at his house, Stone continued. Walk with him to school. Not saying anything, not trying to intimidate anyone, just being present. If the seniors show up, we stand between them and Marcus. Make it clear that he's not an easy target anymore. Sarah spoke up for the first time. I've got medical supplies in case anything does happen, but the goal is for nothing to happen. Just want to be prepared. They reviewed the plan 3 more times, going over contingencies, discussing what to do if the situation escalated, making sure everyone knew their role. Jake would walk point, Stone and Noah would flank Marcus, Vic and Sarah would bring up the rear. They'd spread out enough to not look like they were swarming the kid, but close enough to respond quickly if needed. At 6:15 they mounted up, 4 motorcycles and Sarah's SUV, which would follow at a distance. The morning was cold and gray, the sun not quite up yet, and Noah's breath misted in the air as he climbed onto the back of Stone's bike. He'd never ridden a motorcycle before, and there was a moment of pure terror as the engine roared to life beneath him and they pulled out of the parking lot. But then they were moving, wind rushing past, the city waking up around them, and the fear transformed into something else. Exhilaration, purpose, a sense that he was exactly where he needed to be. They pulled up to Marcus Chen's house at 6:25, parking the bikes along the street. The house was small and neat, a working-class home in a working-class neighborhood. The front door opened before they could knock, and Marcus stepped out, followed by his parents. The kid was thin and nervous-looking, with thick glasses and the kind of slouched posture that came from trying to make yourself smaller, less noticeable. His father was a short, compact man with graying hair and worried eyes. His mother was wringing her hands, looking at the assembled bikers with a mixture of hope and fear. Stone stepped forward and extended his hand. Mr. Chen, I'm Stone Maddox. We spoke on the phone. Mr. Chen shook his hand gratefully. Thank you for doing this. Thank you so much. Marcus has been terrified to go to school, and we don't know what else to do. Stone looked at Marcus, his expression gentle. Hey, Marcus, we're going to walk you to school this morning. That okay with you? Marcus nodded, not quite making eye contact. Yes, sir. You don't have to call me sir. Stone's fine. He gestured to the others. This is Vic, Jake, Sarah, and Noah. We're just here to make sure you get to school safely. You don't have to talk to us or anything. Just walk like you normally would, and we'll be nearby. They set off, Marcus in the middle, the 5 of them arranged around him in a loose formation that felt protective without being obvious. The neighborhood was quiet, just the occasional car passing, early morning workers heading to jobs. Marcus walked with his head down, shoulders hunched, and Noah felt a surge of recognition. He'd been that kid once, or close to it, smaller than his peers, picked on, trying to be invisible because being noticed meant being hurt. 3 blocks from the school, they appeared. 5 teenagers, bigger than Marcus, wearing Letterman jackets and the kind of confidence that came from never having been seriously challenged. They were waiting at an intersection, and Noah saw the moment they spotted Marcus. Their faces lit up with predatory anticipation. Then they saw the bikers, and everything changed. The anticipation flickered, replaced by uncertainty, then wariness. They didn't move from their position, but their body language shifted, became defensive rather than aggressive. Stone kept walking, his pace steady and unhurried, and the others matched him. They were 50 feet away now, then 40, then 30. One of the seniors, the biggest one, probably the ringleader, stepped forward slightly. What's this? Chen brought his babysitters? Stone stopped walking, and the others stopped with him. He looked at the teenager with an expression that was perfectly calm, perfectly neutral, and somehow more intimidating than any aggressive posture would have been. Morning, he said pleasantly. Beautiful day for a walk, isn't it? The kid didn't know how to respond to that. His friends shuffled behind him, looking at each other, clearly not having planned for this scenario. Noah could see the calculation happening. 5 adults, obviously not afraid, obviously willing to get involved if things went sideways. The math wasn't in their favor anymore. We're just talking to our friend Marcus, the ringleader tried, but his voice had lost its edge. That right? Stone looked at Marcus. These guys, your friends? Marcus, for the first time since Noah had met him, lifted his head and spoke clearly. No. Didn't think so, Stone said, returning his attention to the teenagers. Tell you what, how about you boys find another route to school this morning? Give everyone some space to breathe. For a moment, Noah thought it might go another way. The ringleader's face flushed red, and his hands clenched into fists. Pride and anger warred with self-preservation. But then Vic shifted slightly, just a small movement that made his shoulders look bigger, and Jake smiled in a way that suggested he was hoping things would escalate. The teenagers turned and walked away, trying to maintain some dignity, throwing back glances that promised this wasn't over. But Noah knew it was. Bullies like that? They needed easy targets, victims who wouldn't fight back. Marcus wasn't an easy target anymore. They walked Marcus the rest of the way to school, watching as he disappeared through the front doors. Mr. and Mrs. Chen were waiting in the parking lot, having followed in their car, and Mrs. Chen was crying as she thanked them. We can do this again tomorrow if needed, Stone told them, and the day after that, however long it takes for the message to sink in that Marcus is off limits. I don't know how to repay you, Mr. Chen said. Don't need repayment, Stone said simply. Just pass it forward. Someday you see someone who needs help. You help them. That's how this works. As they rode back to the clubhouse, Noah felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pure, uncomplicated satisfaction. They'd done something good. They'd stood between a kid and his tormentors, and they'd done it without violence, without anyone getting hurt, just by showing up and being willing to stand up. It was exactly what Stone had talked about. Preventing violence rather than engaging in it, being the presence that made bad people think twice. At the clubhouse, Stone clapped Noah on the shoulder. You did good today. Stayed calm, didn't escalate, just were present. That's what this is about. Not every situation ends like the corner store. Most of them end like this. Quiet victories that nobody will ever know about except us and the people we helped. That kid, Noah said. Marcus. He reminded me of you? Stone finished. Yeah, I figured. That's why I wanted you on this one. Sometimes the best protectors are the people who remember what it felt like to need protecting. Noah went home that morning feeling 10 feet tall. He picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's, took her to school, went to his shift at the warehouse, and loaded trucks with a smile on his face that confused his coworkers. Marcus texted the group that afternoon. Stone had given him the number, and said the seniors hadn't bothered him all day, that other kids had noticed and started talking to him, that for the first time in months, he felt like maybe things would be okay. That night, tucking Emma into bed, Noah told her a story about a boy who was scared and some people who helped him feel brave. Emma listened with wide eyes, then asked, Is that a real story, Daddy? Yeah, baby, that's a real story. Did you help him feel brave? Noah thought about that morning, about standing there at that intersection with Stone and the others, about the way Marcus had lifted his head and said no when asked if those boys were his friends. I think so, he said. I hope so. Emma smiled and closed her eyes. I knew you were brave, she murmured, already drifting off to sleep. Noah sat there in the dark, watching his daughter breathe, and felt more certain than he'd felt in 3 years that he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he needed to do. The path ahead was still uncertain, still potentially dangerous, still full of choices and consequences he couldn't predict. But for the first time since Sarah had left, since he'd become a single father struggling to survive, he felt like he had purpose beyond just getting through the day. He was part of something that mattered. He was making a difference, however small. He was becoming the kind of man his daughter could be proud of, the kind of man who stood up when standing up was hard. Heroes were made, the card had said. And Noah was beginning to understand that making a hero wasn't about one dramatic moment or one big choice. It was about showing up, day after day, choosing to stand in the gap between the innocent and the darkness, choosing to be present and willing even when it was uncomfortable or scary or cost you something. It was about deciding that some things mattered more than your own safety or comfort. And then living that decision over and over until it wasn't a decision anymore but simply who you were. Noah's involvement with Iron Brotherhood deepened over the following months in ways he couldn't have predicted. What had started as training twice a week expanded into a network of connections and commitments that wove themselves into the fabric of his daily life. The group texts came at irregular intervals, sometimes 3 times in 1 week, sometimes not at all for 10 days. Each message brought a new situation, a new person who needed help, a new opportunity to show up when showing up mattered. He escorted Marcus to school 4 more times before the harassment stopped completely. He helped Vic and Jake patrol a neighborhood where elderly residents had been targeted by thieves posing as utility workers, their presence enough to make the scammers move on to easier hunting grounds. He stood outside a courthouse with Stone while a woman testified against her abusive ex-boyfriend, just in case the man's friends decided to make trouble. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the point, Stone kept reminding him. But the woman had texted afterward to say that knowing they were there had given her the courage to speak truthfully instead of recanting out of fear. The warehouse work continued, monotonous and necessary, but Noah found himself moving through those hours differently now. He wasn't just killing time until his next paycheck. He was maintaining the stability that allowed him to do work that actually mattered. Marcus noticed the change in his attitude and pulled him aside one afternoon. "I don't know what's going on with you," his supervisor said, "but whatever it is, it's working. You're more focused, more efficient. Hell, you're practically running this loading dock yourself some days." He paused, studying Noah with shrewd eyes. "You thinking about moving up? Because there's a supervisor position opening up in 3 months, and I'm planning to recommend you for it." Noah blinked, surprised. A promotion meant better pay, better hours, more stability for Emma. It meant not having to worry quite so much about whether he could afford new shoes when she outgrew her current ones. "I'd be interested," he said carefully. "What would it involve?" "More responsibility, less physical labor, managing schedules, dealing with clients, making sure shipments go out on time. It's still hard work, but it's different hard work." Marcus grinned. "And it pays about $15,000 more a year, which I'm guessing wouldn't hurt." $15,000. That was summer camp for Emma. Proper winter coats, maybe even saving enough to move out of their cramped apartment into something with an extra bedroom. Noah felt something unfamiliar rising in his chest. Hope, genuine hope, that life might get easier instead of harder. "Then yeah," he said, "I'm definitely interested." "Good," Marcus said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Keep doing what you're doing, and the job's yours." And Noah texted Stone about it that night, and the response came back quickly. "That's outstanding news. This is what I've been saying. When you have purpose, when you're working towards something that matters, everything else falls into place. Proud of you." The words sat on Noah's screen, glowing in the darkness of his bedroom, and he felt an unexpected tightness in his throat. Stone wasn't his father. His actual father had died when Noah was 12, a heart attack that had come without warning. But there was something paternal in the older man's approval. Something that filled a space Noah hadn't realized was still empty. 2 weeks later, the call came that would change everything. Noah was at home on a Saturday afternoon, helping Emma build an elaborate castle out of cardboard boxes and duct tape, when his phone buzzed with a message from Stone. "Emergency situation. Need all available members at the clubhouse now. This is serious." Noah's stomach dropped. In the 4 months he'd been active with Iron Brotherhood, Stone had never used the word emergency or demanded everyone show up immediately. Whatever this was, it was bad. "Baby, I need to go out for a little while," Noah said, already reaching for his keys. "Mrs. Chen will come stay with you." Emma looked up from the castle, her face falling. "But we're not done yet." "I know, and I'm sorry. We'll finish it tonight, I promise. But this is important." He was already texting Mrs. Chen, praying she was available. Her response came back within seconds. "Be there in 5 minutes." By the time Noah pulled into the clubhouse parking lot, there were already a dozen motorcycles and several cars scattered across the gravel. He hurried inside and found the main room crowded with more people than he'd ever seen assembled at once. Not just the regular members, but others he didn't recognize. faces grim and tense. Stone stood at the center of it all, his steel-gray eyes harder than Noah had ever seen them. "Good. Noah's here," Stone said when he spotted him. "That's everyone we're going to get. Listen up." He gestured to a woman sitting on one of the couches, a thin figure with dark hair and haunted eyes. She was maybe 30, pretty in a fragile way, and she was trembling despite the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Next to her sat a little girl, probably 5 or 6 years old, clutching a stuffed rabbit and staring at nothing. "This is Jennifer Martinez and her daughter Lily," Stone said, his voice gentle when he addressed them, iron when he turned back to the group. "Jennifer left her husband 3 weeks ago after years of abuse. Got a restraining order, moved into a shelter, did everything right. Yesterday, her husband, Ray Martinez, found out where she was staying. He showed up at the shelter this morning with 2 of his friends, forced his way past staff, and grabbed Lily from the playground." The room erupted in angry murmurs. Noah felt his hands clenching into fists, his heart rate accelerating. A child. Someone had taken a child. Stone raised his hand for quiet. "Police are involved, but they're moving slow. Ray's holed up in a house on the east side, his brother's place, and they're trying to negotiate. Problem is, Ray's unstable. He's texted Jennifer saying if she doesn't come back to him, if the cops try to force their way in, he'll hurt Lily." Stone's jaw tightened. She's 6 years old, and she's scared, and her father is using her as leverage. "What are we supposed to do?" someone asked. "This sounds like a job for a SWAT team, not us." "It should be," Stone agreed. "But the cops are treating this as a custody dispute, not a kidnapping. They're being cautious, trying not to escalate. Which means Lily's sitting in that house with a violent man who's desperate and unpredictable, and every hour that passes is another hour she's in danger." He looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. "Jennifer came to us because we have a reputation for handling situations the system can't or won't. She's asking if there's any way we can get her daughter out safely." Vic stepped forward, his scarred face troubled. "Stone, this is different from anything we've done before. We're talking about potentially going up against armed men, about extracting a child from a hostile situation. This isn't escorting a kid to school or having a conversation with an ex who won't back off. This is tactical, dangerous, possibly illegal, depending on how it goes down." "I know," Stone said quietly, "which is why I'm not ordering anyone to participate. This is volunteers only. Anyone who wants to walk away, no judgment, no consequences. But I'm going in, with or without backup, because that little girl doesn't have time for us to debate the risks." The room was silent for a long moment. Noah looked at Lily, at the way she clutched that rabbit, at the empty expression on her face that he recognized from Emma whenever she'd had a nightmare. That 1,000-yard stare of a child whose sense of safety had been shattered. He thought about what it would feel like if someone took Emma, if his daughter was trapped somewhere with someone who wanted to hurt her, if he was sitting here helpless while people debated whether helping was too risky. "I'm in," Noah said, and his voice came out stronger than he expected. Around the room, others echoed the sentiment. Vic nodded. Jake said, "Obviously." Rodriguez cracked her knuckles. Sarah started pulling medical supplies from her bag. Within 2 minutes, 12 people had committed to the operation, and Stone's expression shifted from grim determination to something approaching relief. "All right," he said, "here's what we know." They spent the next hour planning. Stone pulled up satellite images of the house on his laptop, a rundown 2-story in a neighborhood that had seen better days, with a fenced backyard and minimal cover for approach. Vic, who'd been Army intelligence before his discharge, analyzed the layout and identified potential entry points and obstacles. Jake, who'd done 2 tours as a combat medic, coordinated with Sarah on medical contingencies. Rodriguez, who'd been special operations before taking a knee injury that ended her career, sketched out tactical formations and backup plans. Noah mostly listened, absorbing information, trying not to think too hard about what they were planning. This wasn't like the corner store, where violence had erupted suddenly and Stone had been there to handle it. This was premeditated, organized, dangerous, in ways that made his previous experiences look like minor scuffles. People could die here. He could die here. And Emma would be left without a father, just like he'd feared, just like Sarah had warned him about. But then he looked at Lily again, at Jennifer's tears, and he knew he couldn't walk away. Stone pulled Noah aside while the others continued planning. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You've got a kid at home. Nobody would think less of you if you sat this one out." "Would you?" Noah asked. "Sit it out?" Stone smiled slightly. "No, but I'm a stubborn old bastard with more scars than sense. You're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You've got responsibilities." "So do you," Noah pointed out. "You've got grandkids, Vic told me." "3 of them," Stone confirmed. "And they're the reason I can't let things like this slide. Because I want them growing up in a world where good people stand up, where monsters don't get away with hurting kids, where someone gives enough of a damn to do something even when it's hard." He studied Noah with those steel gray eyes. "But I need you to be clear about what you're signing up for. This isn't training. This isn't a situation we control. Ray Martinez is a violent man who's cornered and desperate. His brother who owns the house has a record, assault, weapons charges. We could be walking into a firefight." "I know," Noah said. "I'm still in." Stone nodded slowly. "Then you stick with me. Don't do anything I don't tell you to do. Don't try to be a hero. Your job is to help get Lily out safely and then get yourself out safely. That's it. Clear?" "Clear." They moved out at dusk, 4 vehicles traveling in loose formation to avoid looking like a convoy. Stone drove his truck with Noah in the passenger seat, Vic and Rodriguez in the back. The mood was tense but focused, everyone checking equipment, running through the plan one more time. Noah had been given a flashlight and a radio, along with strict instructions to stay back unless specifically told to advance. He wasn't trained for this kind of operation, and Stone had been clear that his role was support, not frontline engagement. The house came into view as they turned onto Preston Street, a sagging structure with peeling paint and a lawn that was more dirt than grass. The fence around the backyard was chain link, about 6 feet high with gaps where sections had rusted through. Lights were on inside, and Noah could see shadows moving behind curtains. Ray's truck was in the driveway, a beat-up Ford with a cracked windshield. They parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, splitting into 2 groups. Stone, Noah, Vic, and Rodriguez would take the back entrance. Jake, Sarah, and 4 others would create a distraction at the front, drawing attention away from the extraction team. The plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. Get inside, locate Lily, get out before Ray or his brother could react violently. "Remember," Stone said quietly as they crept through a neighbor's yard toward the back fence, "we're not here to fight. We're here to extract the girl. If we can do that without anyone getting hurt, that's a win. If shooting starts, you get down and stay down. Understand?" Noah nodded, his mouth too dry to speak. His heart was hammering so hard he was sure the others could hear it. Every shadow looked threatening, every sound magnified. This was nothing like training. This was real, and the stakes were a little girl's life. They reached the fence, and Vic produced a pair of wire cutters, quickly snipping through a section near the back corner. The metal parted with soft pinging sounds that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet evening. Rodriguez slipped through first, moving low and fast, her years of training evident in every economical movement. Stone went next, then gestured for Noah to follow. The backyard was cluttered with junk. An old car up on blocks, scattered tools, empty beer cans. They moved between the obstacles, using them for cover, approaching the back door. Through a window, Noah could see into what looked like a kitchen, dirty dishes piled in the sink, empty pizza boxes on the counter. No people visible. Stone pressed his ear to the door, listening. Then he tried the knob. It turned easily, unlocked. He looked back at the others, held up 3 fingers, counted down silently. 3, 2, 1. The door swung open and they flowed inside, Stone leading with Rodriguez right behind him. The kitchen was empty, but voices carried from deeper in the house. Male voices, angry, overlapping. Stone moved toward them with Noah following, every nerve in his body screaming warnings. They cleared a hallway, a bathroom, a bedroom that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. The voices were coming from the front room now, and Noah could make out words. "Cops want to wait us out. Let them wait. Not giving up my daughter to that bitch." Stone held up a fist. "Stop." They froze, and he gestured toward a door off the hallway, partially open. Through the gap, Noah could see pink fabric, a child's dress. "Lily." Stone pointed at Noah and Vic, then at the door. Their job, get to Lily. He and Rodriguez would handle whoever was in the front room. Noah's pulse was racing so fast he felt dizzy, but he nodded. This was it. This was what they'd come for. Stone moved toward the front room, Rodriguez behind him. The moment they disappeared around the corner, Noah and Vic rushed the bedroom door. It swung open to reveal a small room with a bare mattress on the floor, some scattered toys, and Lily sitting in the corner, still clutching her rabbit, her eyes wide with fear. "Hey, sweetie," Vic said softly, kneeling down to her level. "Your mom sent us to take you home. Is that okay?" Lily stared at them, too scared to speak. From the front room came raised voices, Stone's calm baritone cutting through someone else's aggressive shouting. "Ray Martinez, I'm here to talk about your daughter." "Who the hell are you? How did you get in here?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is Lily. She's scared, Ray. She wants to go home to her mother." "Her mother kidnapped her. I'm her father. I got rights." Noah blocked out the argument and focused on Lily. He knelt down next to Vic and tried to make his voice as gentle as possible. "I've got a daughter, too. Her name's Emma. She's a little older than you, and she's got a stuffed rabbit just like yours." "What's your rabbit's name?" Lily looked at him, and something in her eyes shifted, just slightly, from pure terror to cautious curiosity. "Mr. Hops," she whispered. "That's a good name," Noah said. "Mr. Hops looks like he'd be good at keeping you safe, but I bet he'd feel even safer if we got you back to your mom, right?" Lily nodded slowly. "Okay," Noah said. "Can Mr. Hops help us be really quiet and really fast? We need to sneak out the back way. Can you do that?" Another nod. Vic scooped Lily up gently, and she didn't resist, just wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. Noah led the way back toward the kitchen, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. Behind them, the argument in the front room was escalating, Stone's voice still calm, but someone else yelling now, a third voice telling everyone to shut up. They were halfway across the kitchen when the situation exploded. A crash from the front room, breaking glass, someone shouting, "He's got a gun!" And then the unmistakable sound that Noah had only heard in movies but recognized instantly. A gunshot, impossibly loud, reverberating through the house like thunder. Lily screamed, Vic stumbled and went down hard, and Noah's training took over before his conscious mind could catch up. He grabbed Lily from Vic's arms. The big man was moving, not shot but off balance, and ran. Ran for the back door, for the yard, for safety, with Lily's screams in his ears and more shots cracking behind him. He burst through the door and kept running, not looking back, focused only on getting this child away from the violence. Through the gap in the fence, across the neighbor's yard, his lungs burning and his legs pumping, and Lily's small body clutched to his chest. He could hear more gunfire behind him, shouts, chaos, but he didn't stop until he reached the vehicles 2 blocks away where Sarah was waiting. "Take her," Noah gasped, practically throwing Lily into Sarah's arms. "Vic's down, shots fired. I need to go back." "You need to stay here," Sarah said firmly, checking Lily over for injuries even as the girl sobbed. Stone said if shooting started, you get down and stay down. But Vic has Rodriguez and Stone watching his back. Your job was to get Lily out. You did it. Now let the professionals handle the rest. Noah stood there, shaking with adrenaline and fear, listening to the sounds of chaos carrying through the quiet neighborhood. Sirens were wailing now, police finally responding with urgency now that shots had been fired. Neighbors were coming out of their houses, pointing, talking on phones. The operation had gone loud, and there was nothing Noah could do but wait. Rodriguez appeared first, jogging through the darkness with economical movements, her expression grim. "Everyone out," she reported. Vic took a ricochet fragment to the shoulder, nothing serious. Stone's staying back to talk to cops since this is about to get complicated. Jake and the others arrived from their position at the front, reporting that Ray had fired 3 shots, 1 at Stone, 2 Wild, before his brother had tackled him and wrestled the gun away. No one had been seriously hurt except Ray, who'd been punched hard enough by his own brother to break his nose after the idiot started shooting. The brother, apparently, had limits to his loyalty, and endangering a child had crossed them. Jennifer arrived 20 minutes later, brought by one of the other members who'd stayed with her. The reunion with Lily was everything you'd expect, tears and desperate hugs and promises that everything would be okay now. Lily clung to her mother and wouldn't let go, and Jennifer kept saying thank you over and over while crying so hard she could barely breathe. Stone showed up an hour after that, looking tired but satisfied. Cops are handling the rest. Ray's being charged with kidnapping, assault, weapons violations, and about 6 other things. His brother's cooperating, gave a full statement. Jennifer and Lily are safe, restraining orders being upgraded to a more serious protective order, and Ray's not getting bail. He looked at Noah. You did good getting her out, real good. Noah couldn't speak. His hands were still shaking, his heart still racing. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving him feeling hollowed out and nauseous. He'd been in a house where people were shooting at each other. He'd run through gunfire carrying a child. The reality of it was hitting him in waves, and he had to sit down before he fell down. Vic came over, his shoulder bandaged but moving freely. Hey, you okay? I don't know, Noah said honestly. I know, Vic said, sitting down next to him. Your first real firefight. It doesn't get easier, but you did exactly what you needed to do. You got the kid out. That's what matters. Someone could have died, Noah said. We could have died. Lily could have been hit by a stray bullet. This was insane. Yes, Vic agreed. It was. That's the job sometimes. But look. He pointed to where Jennifer and Lily sat in Sarah's SUV, mother and daughter wrapped around each other. That little girl is safe. She's not being used as a weapon against her mother. She's going to grow up knowing that when things were darkest, people showed up for her. That's worth the risk. Noah wanted to argue, wanted to say that nothing was worth the risk of leaving Emma without a father. But he looked at Lily and thought about how it would feel if she were Emma, if his daughter were the one trapped with a violent man, if he were the one desperately hoping someone would help. And he knew that if the positions were reversed, he'd want someone to take that risk. He'd want someone to decide that his daughter's life mattered more than their own safety. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, it is. They dispersed gradually, everyone heading home to process the night's events in their own ways. Stone pulled Noah aside before he left. You going to be okay? I think so, Noah said. Eventually. Good. Take tomorrow off from training. Spend time with Emma. Process this. And Noah? Stone's expression was serious. What happened tonight, that's not typical. Most of what we do is calm and controlled, but sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes the darkness fights back. You need to decide if you can handle that, if you can keep showing up knowing that any call could turn into what tonight turned into. I don't know if I can, Noah admitted. That's honest, Stone said. Think about it. There's no shame in saying this isn't for you, but if you do decide to stay, I need to know you're all in. Can't have people second-guessing themselves in critical moments. Noah drove home in a daze, his mind replaying the events on a loop. The gunshot. The running. Lily's screams. He felt disconnected from his own body, like he was watching someone else's hands grip the steering wheel, someone else's foot press the accelerator. Mrs. Chen was asleep on his couch when he got home. He woke her gently, paid her extra for the late hour, and thanked her profusely. She looked at him with knowing eyes. She'd been a nurse during the war in Vietnam, he remembered. She understood that look that people got when they'd seen too much, and patted his cheek before leaving. Emma was sound asleep, her breathing soft and even, the cardboard castle they'd been building still scattered across the living room floor. Noah stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her sleep, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on him. She was safe. She was okay. She had no idea that her father had just run through gunfire to save someone else's child. He finally went to bed around 3 in the morning, but didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's terrified face, heard the gunshots, felt the adrenaline spike. He kept thinking about Sarah's warnings, about how he had responsibilities, about Emma needing her father. Sunday morning came gray and cold. Noah made Emma pancakes and watched her chatter about her friend's birthday party next week, and he tried to be present, tried to focus on her instead of the loop playing in his head. But Emma noticed. Daddy, you look sad. Just tired, baby. Are you sure? Noah set down his spatula and knelt down to Emma's level. Sometimes grown-ups have to do hard things, things that are scary and make them feel tired afterward. But those things are important, even when they're scary. Does that make sense? Emma considered this seriously. Like when I had to get that shot at the doctor's? That was scary but important? Exactly like that, Noah said, pulling her into a hug. You're very smart, you know that? I know, Emma said matter-of-factly, and Noah laughed despite everything. He spent the day doing normal things, playing with Emma, cleaning the apartment, watching cartoons. But underneath it all, Stone's question kept circling. Could he handle this? Could he keep showing up knowing that any situation could turn violent? Could he keep risking his life when Emma needed him? Monday morning, he called Stone. I need to talk to you about Saturday night. Come by the clubhouse. I'll make coffee. They sat in the empty clubhouse. It was strange seeing it quiet and daylit instead of full of people, and Noah tried to put his thoughts into words. I keep thinking about what would have happened if one of those bullets had hit me. If I'd been killed and Emma had to grow up without a father. How do you justify that? How do you balance protecting strangers against protecting your own family? Stone sipped his coffee, taking his time before responding. You don't. You can't. There's no perfect balance, no equation that makes it make sense. All you can do is decide what kind of person you want to be and what kind of world you want your daughter to grow up in. That's not really an answer. No, Stone agreed, because there isn't a good answer. I've got 3 grandkids, like I said. If something happens to me, they lose their grandfather. But if I stop doing this work, if good people stop standing up, what kind of world are they inheriting? One where kids like Lily are used as weapons, where bullies like those seniors make Marcus's life hell, where women like Tessa get brutalized by men like Briggs and nobody helps. He set down his coffee cup. I can't stop those things from happening everywhere. None of us can. But we can stop them from happening here, in our city, to people we can reach. And maybe that's enough. What if it's not? What if I can't do both? Be there for Emma and be there for people like Lily? Then you choose Emma, Stone said simply. Every time. No one here would judge you for that. Being a father is the most important job there is. But Noah, from what I've seen, you're better at both since you started doing this work. You're more present with Emma, more engaged. Marcus told me you're up for a promotion. You're building a better life for your daughter by becoming a better man. That counts for something. Noah thought about that, about how the exhausted, barely surviving version of himself from 4 months ago compared to who he was now. Stone was right. He was better at being Emma's father now. More patient, more present, more capable of showing her what strength and integrity looked like. I'm scared, Noah admitted. Saturday night scared me. Good, Stone said. Fear keeps you careful. Fear keeps you alive. The people who worry me are the ones who aren't scared, who think they're invincible. You're scared and you showed up anyway. That's courage. That's exactly what we need. They talked for another hour, working through Noah's doubts and fears. Stone shared stories from his own years of service, about times he'd been terrified and times he'd questioned whether what he was doing mattered, about coming home from war and feeling disconnected from normal life, like the world had moved on while he'd been in hell, about finding purpose again through Iron Brotherhood, about learning that protecting people didn't end just because you took off the uniform. The shooting, Stone said finally, that was Ray Martinez making a bad decision in a desperate moment. It wasn't about us or what we were doing. We went in carefully. We had a plan. We executed it as well as we could. Sometimes bad things happen anyway. That's not a reason to stop trying. How do you live with that? Noah asked. With knowing that any time could be the time things go wrong? Stone smiled slightly, a sad expression that held decades of hard-won wisdom. You accept that life is uncertain. You accept that you can't control everything. And then you decide that some things are worth the risk anyway. Love is worth it. Family is worth it. Standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves, that's worth it. You measure your life not by how long you live, but by what you do with the time you have. Noah left the clubhouse that afternoon feeling more settled, more certain. The fear hadn't gone away. He suspected it never would, but it had transformed into something manageable, something that coexisted with his commitment rather than overwhelming it. He was scared, and he was staying. Both things were true. He picked up Emma from school, and they finished building the cardboard castle together. While she played inside it, declaring herself Princess Emma of Castle Living Room, Noah texted the Iron Brotherhood group, I'm still in. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm there. Stone's response came quickly. Knew you would be. Welcome back, brother. That night, after Emma was asleep, Noah sat on his balcony and thought about Lily, about how she was probably sleeping in her own bed now, safe with her mother, maybe having nightmares but alive and protected. He thought about Marcus walking to school without fear. He thought about Tessa behind that counter and how differently that night could have ended. Heroes were made, the card had said. And Noah was beginning to understand that being made meant being forged, tempered through fire and fear and difficult choices. It meant showing up even when you were scared. It meant risking yourself for others because that's what decent people did. It meant accepting that the world was uncertain and dangerous and doing your best to stand between the darkness and the light anyway. He was a father first. That would never change. But he was also becoming something more. A guardian. A protector. Someone who'd looked at the worst the world had to offer and had decided that he would be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. The path ahead was still uncertain. There would be more calls, more situations, more moments where he'd have to choose between safety and service. But he knew now that he'd keep choosing service, keep showing up, keep standing in the gap. Because someone had to. And he discovered that he was someone who could. The promotion came through 3 weeks after the Lily Martinez rescue, just as Marcus had promised. Noah signed the paperwork in a cramped office that smelled like coffee and old paper, his hand steady despite the enormity of what this meant. $15,000 more a year. Benefits that actually covered things. Set hours instead of whatever shifts needed filling. It felt like winning the lottery, except he'd earned it through months of showing up and doing the work, through becoming someone reliable instead of someone just surviving. Emma squealed when he told her, even though she didn't really understand what a promotion meant beyond, "Daddy makes more money now." They celebrated with pizza from the good place instead of the cheap place, and Noah let her order dessert, and they ate until they were both too full and happy to move. Watching her laugh with tomato sauce on her chin, Noah felt something settle in his chest, a sense that maybe, finally, things were moving in the right direction. The supervisor position meant different challenges. Instead of loading trucks, Noah was coordinating teams, managing schedules, dealing with client complaints and logistical problems. It was harder in some ways, easier in others, but most importantly, it was engaging. He had to think, had to solve problems, had to be present and strategic. The hours were better too, 7 to 4 most days, which meant he could pick Emma up from school himself, instead of relying on Mrs. Chen for everything. But the Iron Brotherhood work continued, woven into his new routine like a second job that paid in purpose instead of dollars. The calls came at irregular intervals, sometimes bunched together, sometimes with quiet weeks in between. Noah responded to each one, showing up when Stone needed bodies, lending his presence to situations that required someone willing to stand between threats and victims. He escorted a young woman who'd received death threats from an ex-boyfriend to and from work for 2 weeks, until the man was arrested for violating parole. He helped Vic and Rodriguez patrol a neighborhood where someone had been setting fires in trash cans and mailboxes, their visible presence enough to make the arsonist move on or stop. He stood in a courthouse hallway while a teenager testified against a gang member who'd tried to recruit him, making sure no one intimidated the kid into silence. Most of it was unglamorous and undramatic, exactly as Stone had always said it would be. They were a presence, a deterrent, a message that said some people in this city still gave a damn. And slowly, gradually, Noah watched the impact ripple outward. Marcus Chen, the bullied kid they'd escorted to school, started a self-defense club at his high school. Tessa, the cashier from the corner store, was back working retail, but now with security training and a voice that didn't shake when she had to tell someone no. Jennifer Martinez enrolled in nursing school, determined to build a stable life for Lily without depending on anyone who might hurt them. The people they helped didn't stay victims. They became survivors, then thrivers, then sometimes helpers themselves. It was a cycle that Stone called passing it forward, and Noah was starting to understand how much power there was in that simple concept. 6 months after his promotion, Noah got a call from an unexpected source. His phone rang on a Tuesday evening while he was helping Emma with homework, and the number was one he hadn't seen in months. Sarah, his ex-wife. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello?" Noah. Her voice was different than he remembered, softer, less sharp. I know this is weird, and you probably don't want to talk to me, but I heard about your promotion through my sister who knows Marcus somehow. I wanted to say congratulations. Noah stepped out onto the balcony, away from Emma's ears. Thanks, that's unexpected. I know. Sarah paused, and he could hear traffic in the background, like she was calling from her car. I also heard some other things about you being involved with some kind of community group, veterans or something. Noah's guard went up immediately. Where did you hear that? Does it matter? Look, I'm not trying to start a fight. I just... She stopped, started again. When we talked before about you joining that biker group, I was harsh. I said things that were unfair, and I've been thinking about it, about how I left, about how you've been managing everything by yourself. My sister showed me some articles about that motorcycle club, about the things they do, and I realized I was wrong. Noah didn't know what to say. Sarah admitting she was wrong about anything was unprecedented territory. You're a good father, Noah, Sarah continued, and her voice cracked slightly. You've always been a good father. I was the one who couldn't handle the struggle, who needed more than you could give. But that wasn't your fault. And what you're doing now, trying to make the world safer for Emma and kids like her, that's not irresponsible. That's exactly what a good father does. I don't know what to say, Noah managed. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that I see what you're doing, and I'm proud of you. Emma's lucky to have you. She took a breath. And if you ever need help with her, if you need someone to take her for a weekend so you can do whatever it is you need to do, I'm here. I know I haven't been, but I want to be now, if you'll let me. They talked for another 20 minutes, a conversation that was awkward and painful and somehow healing at the same time. Sarah didn't ask to get back together. They were long past that. But she did ask to be more present in Emma's life, to step up in ways she hadn't since leaving. Noah agreed cautiously, not entirely trusting this version of his ex-wife, but willing to give her a chance for Emma's sake. When he went back inside, Emma looked up from her math problems. Was that Mommy? Yeah, baby. She wants to see you this weekend, if that's okay with you. Emma's face lit up in a way that made Noah's heart ache. Really? She does? Really? She's going to pick you up Saturday morning. That weekend, Noah had the apartment to himself for the first time in months. He spent Saturday morning cleaning, then training at the clubhouse, then just sitting on his balcony with coffee, enjoying the rare silence. Stone called around noon to check in, and they talked about nothing important: sports, weather, the upcoming charity ride Iron Brotherhood was organizing. You sound different, Stone observed. More settled. I feel different, Noah admitted, like things are finally falling into place. The job's going well, Emma's happy, even Sarah's trying to step up. It feels almost too good, you know? Like, I'm waiting for something to go wrong. That's the trauma talking, Stone said. After years of struggle, peace feels suspicious. But Noah, you earned this. You put in the work, you made the changes, you became someone who could handle success. Don't sabotage it by waiting for disaster. Just enjoy it. It was good advice, and Noah tried to follow it. He let himself relax, let himself believe that maybe life could actually get easier instead of harder. He took Emma to the movies, to the park, to the science museum she'd been begging to visit. He went on a date with a woman named Melissa he'd met at the warehouse. Nothing serious, just coffee and conversation, but it felt good to remember that he was someone beyond just Emma's dad, or one of Stone's guys. The months rolled forward. Summer arrived with heat and humidity that made the warehouse feel like an oven, even with industrial fans running constantly. Emma finished second grade with good grades and lots of friends, and Noah enrolled her in a day camp that she loved. The Iron Brotherhood work continued. They helped a veteran suffering from PTSD find housing and treatment. They ran a safety workshop for women in a domestic violence shelter. They organized a neighborhood watch program in an area where crime had been spiking. And then, on a Thursday evening in late August, everything came full circle. Noah was at the clubhouse for training, running through knife defense drills with Rodriguez, when his phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize, but local. He almost ignored it, but something made him step away and answer. Is this Noah Jensen? A male voice, young, nervous. Yeah, who's this? My name's Kyle Briggs. You don't know me, but you know my uncle, Derek Briggs, the guy from the corner store last year. Noah's blood went cold. Briggs. The man who'd grabbed Tessa, who Stone had put down in seconds, who'd gone to prison on multiple charges. What do you want? I need to talk to you and to the bikers who were there that night. My uncle. He's been writing me from prison, and there's some things you need to know, things that could be important. Can we meet? Every instinct Noah had screamed that this was a trap. Why would I agree to that? Because my uncle's about to get out on parole and he's been making threats against the girl from the store, against you, against the bikers. And I know this sounds crazy, but I think he's serious. I think when he gets out, he's going to try to hurt people. Noah's grip tightened on the phone. Call the police. I did. They said threats made in private letters aren't actionable unless they're specific. And my uncle's too smart for that. He talks around things, you know? But I can read between the lines. I know what he's planning. Kyle's voice dropped. Look, I'm not like him. I don't want to be like him. But he's my family, and I can't go to the cops again because they won't do anything, and he'll know it was me. But you guys, you're not cops. You can do something. Noah told Kyle to hold on and walked over to where Stone was working with a group on pressure points. He explained the situation quickly, watched Stone's expression harden into something dangerous. Put him on speaker, Stone said. Noah did. Kyle, I've got Stone Maddox here. He's the one who put your uncle down that night. I remember, Kyle said, and there was something in his voice, respect, maybe, or fear. Mr. Maddox, my uncle talks about you in every letter, about how you humiliated him, how you broke his nose, how everyone in prison knows that some old biker made him look like a punk. He's obsessed, and he gets out in 6 days. What exactly are his threats? Stone asked, his voice level and calm. He says when he gets out, he's going to settle accounts. He's got names, Tessa Hale, Noah Jensen, you. He's been planning something, I don't know what exactly, but he mentions a gun. He mentions making examples. He says the system failed him, but his own justice won't. Stone looked at Noah, then at Vic and Rodriguez, who'd moved closer to listen. Where are you right now, Kyle? At a coffee shop on 7th Street, the one next to the library. Stay there. We're coming to you. They took 3 bikes and arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes later. Kyle Briggs was sitting in a corner booth, a thin kid in his early 20s with the same angular face as his uncle, but without the meanness. He looked scared and exhausted, like he'd been carrying this burden alone for too long. Stone slid into the booth across from him, and Noah sat next to Stone. Vic and Rodriguez positioned themselves nearby, watching the exits and other customers out of habit. Show me the letters, Stone said without preamble. Kyle pulled out a manila folder containing 6 handwritten pages. Stone read through them methodically, his expression never changing, but Noah could see his jaw tighten with each page. When he finished, he set them down carefully. These are threats, but they're vague enough to give him deniability. Your uncle learned something in prison. Stone looked at Kyle directly. Why are you helping us? This is your family. Kyle's hands clenched around his coffee cup. Because what he did to that girl was wrong. What he wanted to do to her was worse. And because I've spent my whole life watching my uncle hurt people and get away with it, and I'm tired of being part of a family that thinks that's okay. His voice shook slightly. I want to be different. I want to be someone who stands up instead of someone who looks away. So I'm standing up now. I'm telling you that he's coming, and he's dangerous, and you need to protect yourselves and that girl. Stone studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, here's what we're going to do. They spent the next hour planning. Stone called in more members, Jake, Sarah, 4 others who'd been part of the corner store response. They contacted Tessa, who was terrified but grateful for the warning. They coordinated with a detective Stone knew, someone sympathetic to what they did, who agreed to increase patrols around Tessa's apartment and the store where she now worked. They set up a protection rotation, making sure Tessa was never alone, that someone from Iron Brotherhood was always nearby. And they prepared for Derek Briggs's inevitable appearance. The man was released on parole 6 days later, Friday morning. Stone had people watching the prison, watching Briggs' last known address, watching everywhere he might go. The reports came back quickly. Briggs picked up his belongings, met with his parole officer, then disappeared into the city. No one could find him, and that was concerning. Noah spent that weekend on high alert, checking on Emma constantly, making sure doors were locked, staying in contact with the group. Sarah had taken Emma for the weekend again. It was becoming a regular thing, and Noah was grateful she was somewhere safe. He stayed at his apartment Friday night, then at the clubhouse Saturday, taking shifts with others to monitor the situation. Sunday afternoon, the call came. Briggs had been spotted near Mike's corner store, the same place where everything had started. He was sitting in a car across the street, watching. Just watching. Stone mobilized everyone immediately. This is it. He's making his move and he's starting where it all began. Psychological power play. Everyone converge on Mike's. Tessa's there working a shift. And Briggs doesn't know we know he's coming. Noah rode with Stone, the motorcycle eating up the miles between the clubhouse and the store. His heart was pounding, adrenaline flooding his system, but this time it was different from that first night. This time he knew what he was capable of. This time he wasn't alone and terrified. This time he was part of something bigger, something that could handle men like Briggs. They arrived to find Briggs's car still parked across the street from Mike's. Through the store windows, Noah could see Tessa behind the counter, looking nervous but holding herself together. Mike himself was there too, restocking shelves, and 2 undercover police officers were posing as customers. The detective had come through after all. 10 motorcycles pulled up in formation, parking in a line between Briggs' car and the store entrance. The bikers dismounted slowly, deliberately, forming a wall of leather and steel and absolute determination. Stone walked to the front of the group, and Noah stood beside him, along with Vic and Rodriguez and Jake and all the others who'd become his family over these months. Briggs got out of his car. He looked different from that night, harder, more scarred, the kind of damage that prison does to a man who goes in angry and comes out angrier. His eyes swept across the assembled bikers, and Noah saw recognition spark when he spotted Stone. Then fury when he realized he was outnumbered again. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here," Stone called across the street, his voice carrying but not shouting. "This place is under protection. The girl is under protection. You come near either, you'll wish you'd stayed in prison." Briggs laughed, but it was a brittle sound. "You can't watch them forever, old man. I got nothing but time now. Sooner or later, you'll slip, and when we do, you'll find 20 more people standing in line behind us," Stone interrupted. "We're not going away, Briggs. Every step you take toward that girl, toward Noah, toward anyone involved in what happened that night, we'll be there. We'll be watching. We'll be waiting. And if you try anything at all, you won't be dealing with the legal system. You'll be dealing with us." The threat hung in the air, clear and unmistakable. This wasn't a bluff. This was a promise, backed by men and women who'd proven they were willing to follow through. Briggs stood there for a long moment, his hands clenching and unclenching, violence radiating off him like heat. Noah could see him calculating, weighing options, trying to find an angle, but there wasn't one. He was alone. They were many. He was isolated. They were unified. He was a coward who preyed on the weak. They were protectors who stood against predators. "This isn't over," Briggs finally said. "Yes," Stone said quietly, "it is. Your parole officer's been informed about you showing up here. Those cops in the store right now, they've documented everything. You're one mistake away from going back to prison, and we're going to make sure you make that mistake if you don't walk away right now and never come back." Briggs looked at the store one more time, at Tessa visible through the window, and Noah saw the moment when the calculation shifted, when the risk finally outweighed whatever revenge fantasy he'd been nursing. He got back in his car without another word and drove away, tires squealing slightly, his anger impotent and wasted. They watched him disappear down the street, and only then did Stone allow himself to relax slightly. "Stay here for a bit," he told the group. "Make sure he doesn't circle back." Noah walked into the store where Tessa was standing behind the counter with tears streaming down her face. The undercover officers were already on their radios, reporting Briggs' location and direction. Mike was standing next to Tessa with his arm around her shoulders, and when he saw Noah, he nodded once, a gesture of profound gratitude. "Thank you," Tessa said, her voice shaking. "Thank you all so much." "You're safe now," Noah said. "He's not coming back. He knows we're watching, and he's not stupid enough to try anything when he knows he'll get caught." They stayed for 2 hours, visible and present, making sure Briggs didn't return. Eventually, word came through official channels. Briggs had violated parole by approaching a location connected to his victim. Police had picked him up at his residence and he was going back to prison, this time for longer. The threat was over. As they were preparing to leave, Tessa pulled Noah aside. That night in the store when you stayed even though you should have run, that changed my life. Not just because you and the others saved me, but because it showed me what real courage looks like. I went back to school because of that. I'm studying social work now. I want to help people like you helped me. Noah felt something swell in his chest, pride and humility mixed together. You were always strong. We just showed up at the right time. No, Tessa said firmly. You showed up when no one else would. That matters. That changes everything. They rode back to the clubhouse as the sun was setting, the sky painted in oranges and purples. The city spread out below them. At the clubhouse, Stone called everyone together in the main room. Today was a reminder of why we do this, he said. Derek Briggs thought he could come back and intimidate people, thought he could terrorize someone who'd already survived him once. He was wrong because we stood together, because we showed up, because we decided that some people in this city still give a damn. He looked around at the assembled faces. I'm proud of every one of you, proud to call you family, proud to stand with you. There were nods and murmured agreements, and Noah felt it again, that sense of belonging, of purpose, of being part of something that mattered. These people weren't just colleagues or friends. They were brothers and sisters in a battle that most people never even knew was being fought. Later that night, after everyone had dispersed and Noah was driving home, Stone called him. You did good today. Stood tall when it counted. I was scared, Noah admitted. Of course you were. Fear's natural, but you showed up anyway. That's what counts. Stone paused. I've been thinking about something. About leadership, about the future. I'm not getting any younger, and Iron Brotherhood needs people who can step up, who can take responsibility when I'm not around. I think you could be one of those people. Noah almost swerved off the road. Stone, I've only been doing this for 9 months, Stone finished, and in that time you've proven yourself over and over. You're reliable, you're brave, you think clearly under pressure, and people trust you. Those are the qualities of a leader. I'm not saying it happens overnight, but I want you to start thinking about it, about taking on more responsibility, about maybe running some operations yourself. I don't know if I'm ready for that. No one's ever ready, Stone said, but you'll rise to it when the time comes. Think about it. Noah pulled into his apartment parking lot and sat in his truck for a few minutes after hanging up, processing everything. Leadership, responsibility. The idea was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. He thought about that version of himself from almost a year ago, exhausted, barely surviving, just trying to make it to the next day. That person would never have imagined this future, this life where he mattered, where he was someone other people looked to for guidance and protection. He went upstairs, and the apartment was quiet. Emma was still with Sarah. He stood on his balcony looking out over the city, thinking about all the people down there, all the lives being lived, all the struggles happening in darkness. And he thought about how many of those struggles could be eased if someone just showed up, just stood between the victim and the victimizer, just gave enough of a damn to say, not here, not today. His phone buzzed, a text from Emma. Mommy and I made cookies. I saved you 3. See you tomorrow. Love you, Daddy. Noah smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. This life he'd built, working a good job, being present for his daughter, standing up for people who needed protection. It was messy and complicated and sometimes scary. But it was meaningful. It was purposeful. It was exactly what he needed to be doing. Monday morning came bright and clear. Noah dropped Emma at school, kissed her forehead, watched her run off to join her friends. Then he drove to the warehouse, parked in the supervisor spot that still felt surreal, and walked into a job that challenged him and paid him enough to build a real future. At lunch, he got a text from Kyle Briggs. My uncle's back in prison. Thank you for stopping him. And thank you for showing me what being a man actually looks like. I'm starting community college next month. Criminal justice. I want to be someone who helps instead of someone who hurts. Noah showed the text to Stone during training that evening, and the older man smiled. That's the real victory right there. Not just stopping Briggs, but changing the trajectory of someone who might have followed in his footsteps. That kid's going to make a difference now because we showed him it was possible. We're not saving the world, Noah said. No, Stone agreed, but we're saving our corner of it, and if everyone saved their corner, the world would be a pretty different place. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Noah worked his days, spent evenings with Emma, responded to Iron Brotherhood calls when they came. He took Sarah up on her offer to take Emma more regularly, which gave him more freedom to help when situations arose. The relationship with his ex-wife would never be perfect, but it had evolved into something functional, something that worked for Emma's benefit. He went on more dates with Melissa, the woman from the warehouse. She knew about his Iron Brotherhood work. He'd been upfront about it, and she thought it was admirable rather than crazy. They took things slow, neither of them in a rush, but it felt good to have someone to talk to. Someone who understood that life was complicated and messy and still worth showing up for. 3 months after the Briggs situation, Stone called a special meeting at the clubhouse. Everyone was there, packed into the main room, curious about what warranted this level of gathering. Stone stood at the front, looking serious but not grim. I've been doing this for 15 years, he said without preamble. Built Iron Brotherhood from nothing into something that matters. Something that makes a difference. But I'm 58 years old, and my knees are shot, and my wife has been very patient about me running off at all hours to help strangers. It's time for me to step back. Not step away. I'll still be here, still be involved, but step back from day-to-day leadership. A murmur went through the crowd. Stone raised his hand for quiet. I've asked 3 people to share leadership responsibilities going forward. Vic, who's been with me since the beginning. Rodriguez, who brings tactical expertise we need, and Noah Jensen, who represents what this organization is about, regular people who decide to be extraordinary. Noah felt every eye in the room turn to him. His face flushed hot, his heart hammering. This was real. Stone was serious. Noah's going to coordinate community outreach and new member training, Stone continued. He's going to be the face of Iron Brotherhood for people who need help but are scared of bikers. A ripple of laughter. And he's going to make sure we stay focused on what matters, protecting people, preventing violence, being the presence that makes bad people think twice. After the meeting, people came up to congratulate Noah, to shake his hand, to tell him they were glad Stone had chosen him. It was overwhelming and humbling, and Noah kept waiting to feel like a fraud, like someone who didn't deserve this. But the feeling never came. Instead, he felt ready. Uncertain, yes. Scared, absolutely. But ready to rise to what was being asked of him. Vic pulled him aside near the end of the night. Stone didn't choose you because you're perfect. He chose you because you remember what it's like to be vulnerable, because you've got empathy along with courage. That's rare. Don't waste it. I'll try not to, Noah promised. He drove home that night with his mind racing, thinking about responsibility and leadership and all the ways he could fail. But he also thought about Marcus Chen, who now ran a self-defense program, about Tessa Hale, who was studying to become a social worker, about Lily Martinez, who was growing up safe with a mother who'd found strength after surviving hell, about Kyle Briggs, who was breaking a family cycle of violence, about all the lives that had been touched, changed, saved, because people had decided to show up. The next morning, Noah woke to Emma jumping on his bed. "Daddy, Daddy, wake up! It's Saturday!" He groaned and pulled her into a hug, tickling her until she shrieked with laughter. They made pancakes together, her mixing, him cooking, and ate breakfast while she told him elaborate stories about the imaginary kingdom where Princess Emma ruled with wisdom and kindness. Later that afternoon, they went to the park. Emma played on the swings while Noah sat on a bench, watching her with the kind of present attention that would have been impossible a year ago when he'd been too exhausted to do anything but survive. She was growing so fast, her legs getting longer, her face losing some of that baby roundness. 7 years old now, heading toward 8, her whole life ahead of her. "Daddy," Emma called from the top of the jungle gym. "Watch me." "I'm watching, baby." She came down the slide with her arms spread wide, fearless and joyful, and Noah thought about the world she was growing up in. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. There would always be people like Briggs, people like Ray Martinez, people who wanted to hurt others for their own twisted reasons. But there would also always be people like Stone, like Vic, like everyone in Iron Brotherhood who decided that standing up mattered more than staying safe. People who showed up when showing up was hard. People who stood between the innocent and the darkness because someone had to, and they decided it might as well be them. Noah had become one of those people. Not because he was special or brave or particularly talented, but because he'd made a choice to be more than what circumstances demanded. He'd chosen purpose over comfort, courage over fear, service over safety. And in making that choice, he'd found himself. Found the man he was supposed to be, the father Emma deserved, the person who could look at himself in the mirror and feel proud instead of ashamed. Heroes were made, the card had said, and Noah understood now that the making was ongoing, a daily choice to show up and stand tall and do what was right, even when it was hard. He wasn't finished being made, probably never would be. But he was further along the path than he'd been that rainy night in Mike's corner store when everything had changed. Emma ran over, breathless and happy. "Can we get ice cream?" "Sure, baby, whatever you want." They walked to the ice cream shop holding hands, Emma chattering about school and friends and all the small important things that made up her world. And Noah listened, really listened, present and engaged and grateful for this life he'd built from the wreckage of what came before. That night, after Emma was asleep, Noah stood on his balcony one last time, looking out over the city lights. His phone buzzed, a message from the Iron Brotherhood group. A woman needed escort to a restraining order hearing tomorrow. Could anyone help? Noah typed back, "I'm available. Tell me when and where." Because that's what he did now. That's who he was. Someone who showed up. Someone who stood between the darkness and the light. Someone who'd been broken and had rebuilt himself into something stronger. The future was uncertain. It always was. There would be more calls, more situations, more moments where he'd have to be brave when being brave was terrifying. But he'd face them with the confidence of a man who knew what he was capable of, who had a family of brothers and sisters at his back, who understood that the greatest purpose in life was using whatever strength you had to protect those who had less. Heroes weren't born. They were made, forged through fire and fear and difficult choices. They were ordinary people who decided to be extraordinary, who stood up when standing up was hard, who looked at the world's darkness and said, "Not on my watch." Noah Jensen had become that kind of hero. Not perfect, not fearless, not invincible, just present, just willing, just standing in the gap when the gap needed someone to stand in it. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.